You arrive with a whole mental scrapbook of hell, red lighting, screaming, pitchfork accessories, maybe a demon doing customer service at the torture desk. You're expecting the Bible to open like a trapdoor. Instead, it opens like a filing cabinet. And the moment you go looking for the fire and brimstone theme park, you realize you may have been holding the wrong brochure this entire time. Hey guys, tonight we begin with the hell you think you know. We're going to step into the world where these words first lived and try to find that familiar underworld you've seen in paintings, poems, and nightmares. You're going to feel the whiplash of expecting flames and finding dust, ink, and uncomfortable silence. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the ancient world with modern expectations. The good news, you're about to read something old enough to make your phone feel like a toddler. The bad news, you're doing it in a room that smells like sweat, oil smoke, and damp goat. You sit up and immediately realize your mattress is basically a flattened insult made of straw. It crackles under you like it's holding a grudge. Something tiny skitters away, offended you, interrupted its breakfast. The light in here is not light. It's a little olive oil lamp trying its best, like a single candle attempting to illuminate a Costco. The smoke from it clings to the ceiling and then to your clothes, like it has plans. Across the room, someone clears their throat in a way that sounds medically concerning. A scribe. He has that calm, exhausted look of a man who has copied the same sentence 6,000 times and now hates vowels. In front of you is the scroll. Not a nice crisp book with pages that behave. A scroll is a long, stubborn strip of hide that wants to roll up like a sleeping snake. It smells like animal, because it is animal. You run your finger along it and get a little grime under your nail as a free souvenir. Now you came for hell. You came for the inferno. The classic basement level of the universe with the lava features, the wailing soundtrack, and the really aggressive interior design. You have seen the paintings. You have seen the fan art. You have seen the medieval imagination go absolutely feral with a paintbrush. So you lean in like, all right, where's the part with the demons? You start unrolling. The scroll fights you. It snaps back a little, like, don't touch me. You unroll more. Your elbows knock something over because your spatial awareness is built for chairs and tables, not floor living. A clay cup wobbles, survives, and you feel personally judged. Your eyes scan for the big, obvious word. Hell. There should be a section header, right? Maybe a little flame icon in the margin. You find a genealogy, so many names. Names stacked on names like somebody's trying to build a tower out of human beings. Your hell expectations are already sweating. You keep going, a little faster now. Surely it's coming. There's always a jump scare eventually. Instead, you get rules. Rules about animals. Rules about blood. Rules about what you do with the parts of the animal you don't want. It's like opening a horror novel and getting a 40-page manual on how to store grain safely. Useful, yes. Not exactly eternal fire. You glance up at the scribe, like he's hiding the spicy pages. He just blinks slowly, as if blinking is a chore. His hands are stained dark with ink, and his nails look like they've never met soap. You try the direct approach. You mime flames with your fingers. You make a little ah face. You point down, like you're describing a basement. The scribe watches you with the patient concern of someone observing a goat that's acting weird. He says something you do not understand, and you catch maybe one word in it that sounds like no. Okay, fine. You go back to the scroll and start hunting like it owes you money. You're scanning hard now. Your finger drags along the lines and you get a tiny paper cut, except it's not paper, it's ancient hide, so it feels personal. Where are the demons? Where's the guy with the pitchfork who looks like he works at a medieval haunted house? Where's the lake of fire, the torture chamber, the screaming queue line? You unroll and unroll. You find poetry. Beautiful, intense, sometimes angry. Also, weirdly, practical. People complaining about their enemies. People begging for help. People saying they're tired, like deep tired. You keep waiting for the big reveal where the wicked get dragged into the underground furnace. Instead, the vibe is more like, life is short, my back hurts, and everyone's acting insane. You try to say the word hell out loud. It comes out in your accent, your modern mouth, your confident little syllable. Hell. You expect the room to shudder dramatically. Nothing shudders. The scribe repeats it, confused. It sounds wrong in his mouth, like he's chewing a pebble. He tries again, slower, as if you're a difficult child. You repeat it, louder, which is always the best plan when time traveling. Hell. A nearby fly lands on your cheek like it pays rent here. You slap it and miss. The fly stays. You are not the top species in this room. You point at the scroll again, demanding, where is it? Where's the part that kept medieval artists employed for centuries? The scribe shrugs. And it's the most devastating shrug you've ever experienced. It's a shrug that says, friend, I don't know what you want. It's a shrug that says, we have dust, we have death, we have sadness. Pick one. And you realize something uncomfortable. You are standing in a world that does not share your mental pictures. Your hell has dramatic lighting and a staff of monsters. Their death talk is quieter, heavier, and honestly more unsettling, because it's not trying to entertain you. You go back to the scroll with new desperation. You start searching for anything that resembles your childhood imagery. Fire, punishment, torture, a horned manager named Steve. You find fire, sure, but it's cooking fire. It's altar fire. It's the kind of fire that makes dinner or smoke, not a cosmic torture spa. You find monsters, technically, but they're not your little red guys with pitchforks. They're beasts and shadows and things that feel like nightmares without the courtesy of a clear label. And you keep waiting for someone to just say it, to spell out the place where the bad people go forever, to describe the architecture. But the scroll keeps doing this maddening thing where it stays ancient. It refuses to become a medieval painting. It refuses to turn into an Italian poem with 9 circles and a gift shop. Your stomach drops a little, and you hate that it does, because you came here so sure, so confident that you'd crack open this scroll and there it would be. The underworld you've seen 100 times. Instead, you've got a smoky room, aching knees, ink-stained hands, and a scribal stare that says, welcome to the original source material, buddy. You roll the scroll back a bit, then forward again, like you might have missed the hell section by a few inches. The hide squeaks softly as it moves, like it's laughing at you. Your fingertips are blackened with soot and oil, and your modern certainty is starting to look adorable. Somewhere outside, a donkey brays like an alarm you can't snooze. A baby cries. Someone coughs and spits in a way that makes you grateful you're not sharing a cup. And you're still sitting there with the scroll, scanning, squinting, searching for a thing you were sure would be obvious. A blazing pit, a devil's face, a sign that says, abandon hope, in nice calligraphy. but all you find is the ancient world, staring back at you through smoke and ink, and it's about to get very weird, very quiet, and very different from the hell you brought with you. The lamp coughs again, like it's also tired of your expectations. Oil smoke sits in the room the way damp laundry sits in a gym bag. It clings, it judges, it becomes part of you. Outside, the day has moved on without asking permission. The light coming through the doorway is harsh, white and dusty. It makes the little floating bits in the air look like they're auditioning for a plague. The scribe drags himself to his feet with the slow resignation of a man whose job is copy ink until the sun dies. He gestures for you to follow, and you do, because honestly, what else are you doing here? You step out, and the heat smacks you across the face like an unpaid bill. The street is narrow and busy in that ancient way that means there is no personal bubble. Shoulders bump, sandals scrape. A donkey shoves past you with the confidence of a creature that has never once apologized. Someone nearby is cooking something that smells like onions and smoke in a pot that has never been fully cleaned. Your stomach reacts like, maybe, and your brain reacts like, absolutely not. A child runs by with a crust of bread in one hand and a smear of something unidentifiable on their cheek. The scribe leads you past a cluster of men talking low. Their faces are tight. There's a heaviness in the air that isn't just heat. You hear it before you see it. A sound like wind, but human. A wail that rises and falls, not pretty, not staged, the raw kind that scrapes the back of your teeth. You round a corner and walk right into a funeral. Not a tasteful, quiet modern funeral with padded chairs and tissues in neat boxes. This is loud grief, public grief, torn clothes, dusty hair, people sitting on the ground like gravity has doubled. A woman rocks back and forth with her hands clenched in her robe. An older man keeps making the same sound over and over, like his throat is stuck on one note. Someone's face is streaked with dirt and tears, and the dirt has turned to mud in the lines of their skin. In the middle of them is the body, wrapped tight in cloth, no polished wood, no satin lining, just fabric wound around a human being who was walking around recently, and now is very much not. The smell reaches you, faint but unmistakable. It's the beginning of that sweet sour edge that makes your body go, no, we hate this. Someone has stuffed herbs in the wrappings, and it helps the way a single mint helps a dumpster. The scribe stands beside you, hands folded, eyes lowered. He doesn't look dramatic. He looks familiar with this. A man steps forward and says words you don't fully catch, but you catch the shape of them. The shape is, this is where everyone goes. The shape is, down. They lift the body. It's not gentle the way you want it to be. It's careful, but practical. This is not a world where death is rare. You follow because the crowd moves, and you move with it. Feet shuffle through dust that puffs up and settles on your ankles. The sun is brutal, and the grief is somehow louder under it. They lead you outside the tighter streets, out toward the edge where the ground breaks into rough stone and shallow caves. A place where the living don't linger. A place where you can feel the air change, even with the heat. The tomb is a mouth in the rock. Dark inside. Cooler, but not in a comforting way. Cooler like a cellar. Cooler like a pit. When you step close, the smell is old stone and damp earth, and something like leftover human presence. Not quite rot, not quite clean. Just the scent of things that do not leave once they arrive. Someone holds a small lamp near the entrance. The light touches the walls and shows you scratches in the stone. Marks from hands maybe, or tools, or panic if your imagination is feeling rude. They slide the wrapped body inside. It disappears into the dark with a quiet finality that makes your throat tighten. A few murmured words, a hand pressed to the rock, a forehead leaned in, a kiss to cloth. Then someone reaches for the stone. You've seen it in movies. You expect a dramatic roll, a cinematic rumble, a perfect round boulder. What you get is a heavy slab that scrapes and grinds like it hates being moved. Two men push, muscles straining, sandals slipping. The stone drags across the ground with a sound like a door shutting in slow motion. Dust billows up, and you taste grit immediately. And when the slab meets the rock, it's done. No window, no crack of light, just sealed. The wailing rises again, and for a moment it feels like the only sound in the entire world. Then it thins out as people back away, because the living have to keep living. They wipe their faces, they steady each other, they start walking. You linger, staring at the stone like it owes you an explanation. The scribe touches your arm and guides you back toward town. His hand is ink-stained and warm. He looks at you like, yes, this is what you were looking for. Not fire. This. Back inside the smoky room, the scroll waits like a quiet dare. You sit again on the straw that used to be a field, and now is mostly a personality test. Your knees crack in a way that feels loud. The scribe settles opposite you and unrolls the hide carefully. He points to a line. You lean in, squinting at the letters. The ink is dark and slightly raised, like it's still proud of itself. You trace the words with your eyes, and the meaning hits like cold water. Down, depths, a pit. A word shows up, and it's not hell, it's Sheol. It doesn't sparkle, it doesn't hiss, it just sits there, heavy as a stone slab. You try saying it under your breath. Sheol. It tastes like dust. It tastes like the inside of that tomb smelled. The scribe watches your face, waiting for the moment you get it. He taps the line again, patient. You read with him, slow. A voice on the page is begging not to go there, not because Sheol is full of demons with creative torture devices, because Sheol is where songs stop, where mouths don't open anymore. You look up at the scribe, and he gives a tiny nod, like yes. You wanted an afterlife map. You got a drain. You keep reading. The words talk about Sheol the way you talk about the bottom of the ocean. Not evil, not morally charged, just deep, unreachable, and utterly indifferent. There's a line about remembering. In Sheol, there's no remembering. No one says your name and means it. No one tells your stories until your face comes back into focus. The scribe makes a small sound, like agreement, like he's heard this line at gravesides. He rubs his thumb against a smudge of ink on his finger. He doesn't even try to wipe it off. It lives there now. You read another line. It's someone arguing with God, basically saying, if I go down there, who's going to praise you? It's strangely blunt, almost petty, like a person grabbing the edge of a roof and yelling, if I fall, I'm not paying rent. The scribe lets out a quiet breath through his nose that might be a laugh. Or maybe that's just what happens when you've copied the same plea 50 times. You can't tell anymore. You try to picture Sheol. No, not picture, because your brain keeps wanting to decorate it. Your brain wants to add torches and caverns and a sarcastic skeleton bartender. But Sheol refuses. Sheol is not a place you can decorate. It's the feeling of walking into a room and realizing everyone already left. Forever. The scroll keeps offering you the same vocabulary. Darkness, silence, dust. It talks about going down, 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 like the world has a basement nobody wants to acknowledge. You can almost feel it under your feet now, like the ground has a secret. You glance at the packed earth floor of the room. It's hard, cracked, sprinkled with bits of straw and whatever fell out of someone's pocket. It looks solid, and now it feels thin. The scribe unrolls further, and the poetry changes tone. Now it's not pleading, now it's angry. A voice is demanding to know why life is even happening, why pain exists, why people suffer. You can feel the heat of it, even in ink. This is Job territory. The room feels smaller as you read, not because the walls moved, because the words are crowded with frustration. You read about a person wishing they'd never been born, wishing they'd gone straight from womb to grave like a shortcut, like skipping the whole messy middle of life. And where would that shortcut go? Not to flames, to Sheol, to rest. That's the part that makes your skin prickle. Because it's not described like a torture chamber. It's described like a bed. A dark bed, sure. A bed with dust for sheets. But still, rest. Job's voice talks about Sheol like it's the one place nobody can bother you anymore. No bosses, no enemies, no aching body forced to get up and do it again. No social obligations, no pretending you're fine. You read the line about the great and the small being there together. Kings, slaves, the powerful and the ignored, all equalized in the same dark. It's the ancient version of everyone ending up in the same group chat, except the group chat is silent forever. No typing bubbles, no replies, just there. Your throat feels dry. You swallow, and it sounds loud in your ears. You glance toward the doorway, where daylight still exists like a rumor. The world outside is bright, noisy, and full of living problems. The world described on the scroll is not bright. It's a land of gloom, the words say, where light is like darkness, where even morning would look like midnight, where shapes exist but don't matter. You pause because your brain keeps trying to insert familiar horror imagery. A monster, a scream, something to make it make sense. But Sheol stays stubbornly plain. No screams, just quiet. The scribe shifts, and his robe makes a soft, rasping sound. He points again. More lines. More insistence that Sheol is down, hidden, barred. Barred. That word lands differently, because barred means you can't just leave. Not like a locked door in a haunted house you can eventually kick open. Barred like a prison nobody guards because no one walks out anyway. You read about gates. Gates of Sheol, as if Sheol is a city made of nothing, and it still has an entrance. You can't help it. You picture yourself walking toward those gates. The sun above is gone. The ground slopes downward in a way that doesn't match any hill you've ever seen. The air gets colder with each step, and not in a refreshing way. It's the cold of stone that never sees daylight. Your sandals scrape on gravel that crunches and slips. You smell damp earth and iron, like old water in a forgotten jar. Your lamp is smaller now, weaker, flame trembling like it knows it's outmatched. You reach the gate, not ornate, not gold, just massive, dark shut. You press your hand to it. The metal is clammy. Your palm comes away smelling like pennies and dust. You listen, expecting something. Nothing answers. No voices, no wails. Not even the courtesy of a ghostly moan. Just the sound of your own breathing, which feels embarrassingly alive. Back in the room, you blink hard and realize you've been holding your breath. The scribe's eyes are on you. He doesn't ask if you're okay. Nobody here asks that. Because what would be the point? Life is hard. Death is harder. Keep reading. The scroll moves under his hands. More lines, more voices, and you start to realize something that makes your stomach sink in slow motion. Nobody is saying, the wicked go to Sheol. They're saying, People go to Sheol. Full stop. Good people, bad people, people who tried, people who didn't. The grave doesn't care. The pit doesn't check your record. Sheol is not a courtroom. It's a closet the whole world eventually gets shoved into. You read a line where someone says their bed will be in Sheol. You almost laugh at the word bed because your modern mind wants pillows, but you've already experienced the bedding options here. Half-rotted straw, a rolled cloak that smells like old sweat and sun-baked skin. So yes, fine. A bed made of dirt, a blanket made of dark. You rub your arms, and it doesn't help. The room is warm, but the concept is cold. Another line mentions worms casually, like they're just part of the furniture. Not horror movie worms, normal worms. The kind that do what worms do. It's almost worse that way. No drama. Just nature finishing the job. Your tongue feels thick in your mouth. You want water. You don't see any that looks remotely trustworthy. The scribe unrolls again, and the voice changes. Now it's Ecclesiastes. You can feel it immediately, because the tone is tired in a different way. Not angry, not pleading. Just blunt. You read about the living knowing they will die. Yeah, you think. That tracks. You've seen the funeral. You've smelled the stone. Then you read what it says about the dead. The dead know nothing. No plans, no work. No projects half finished. No little goals. No, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow doesn't live down there. You glance at your hands, at the dirt under your nails from just existing in this place for a few hours. Your hands feel suddenly precious. They move. They do things. They can hold a cup, turn a page, touch a person's shoulder. Down there they don't. The words go on. No love, no hate, no envy. That line makes you pause, because it's not even threatening. It's emptying. It's like someone unplugging a lamp and saying, there, no more light, no more heat, no more anything. Your brain tries to protect itself by making it philosophical, but the room won't let you. The room smells like smoke and goat and sweat. Someone outside yells at a child. A fly lands on the scroll and rubs its little hands, together like it's plotting something. Life is loud up here. Down there, Ecclesiastes says, there is no portion, no share, no part. Whatever you did under the sun, it stays under the sun. You look toward the doorway again. The sun is still there, bright as ever. It doesn't look concerned. It just burns. The scribe clears his throat, and it's that same concerning sound from earlier, like his lungs have been through things. He points to another line, and you read it. A warning not to hold back your hand from doing what you can while you can. Because Sheol is where hands stop. Not punished. Stopped. The scroll feels heavier now, even though it's the same animal hide it was 10 minutes ago. Your fingers smell faintly of it. Leather and oil and the ghost of whatever it used to be. You shift on the straw, and something bites you. A tiny sting on your calf. You slap at it, and the scribe gives you a look like, yes, welcome. You scratch the spot, and your mind keeps chewing on the same idea. So this is it. Not fire, not torment, not a cosmic dungeon. Just the end. You read more psalms. Some are confident, some are terrified, some are angry, and all of them treat Sheol like a real possibility that could swallow you at any moment. They talk about being saved from Sheol the way you talk about being pulled out of deep water. Not because the water is evil, because you can't breathe in it. One voice describes Sheol as a place of silence. Silence. You've never noticed how loud your world is until you think about silence that never breaks. No birds, no footsteps, no pots clanging, no arguments through thin walls. Not even the annoying donkey, just quiet that stretches on until time stops meaning anything. The scribe pauses and looks at you like he can tell you're getting rattled. He doesn't soften it. He just unrolls more. There's a line about God not being praised in Sheol. It's not framed like rebellion. It's framed like reality. Praising requires breath. Praising requires a mouth and lungs and sound. Down there, breath is done. You sit back, and the straw crackles under you like it's gossiping. Your modern brain wants to protest. Surely God is everywhere. Surely nothing is outside reach. But the voices on this scroll are not speaking like people who have been handed a neat system. They're speaking like people staring into a grave and feeling the full weight of what a grave is. You think about that tomb mouth again. The cold air, the sealed stone, the smell of herbs trying to argue with decay. You remember how quickly the crowd had to leave, how the living backed away and went back to bread and water and chores, because what else can you do? The scribe nudges the scroll toward you again. He wants you to see something. A line about being gathered. Gathered to your people. Gathered to your fathers. It sounds comforting until you remember what gathered means here. Not a reunion with hugs and warm light. Gathering like bones collected in darkness. A family reunion where nobody speaks, nobody eats, nobody even has a face anymore. It's less like Thanksgiving, more like the storage room under the house where everything ends up. You swallow again. Your mouth tastes like smoke. Outside, a cart rattles by, and you hear the squeal of wood on wood. A dog barks once, sharp, then goes quiet. You realize you've been waiting for someone to show up and say, "Don't worry, it's not that bad." No one says it, because Sheol isn't bad the way a punishment is bad. It's bad the way losing your name is bad. It's bad the way being forgotten is bad. You look down at your hands again. You've spent your life collecting little proof that you exist. Photos, messages, voices saved in your phone. 100 tiny anchors that tell you you were here and people knew it. In this room, the anchors are different. A name spoken at your grave. A stone marker maybe. A story told by your children if you're lucky. And then time. Time does what it always does. It erases. Sheol is the place where erasing finishes. The scribe sits very still. For a moment, you notice how young he actually is under the exhaustion. Young enough to want a long life. Old enough to know better than to assume. His fingers hover near the scroll like it's sacred, but also like it's dangerous. Not because it will curse him, because it will tell the truth. You keep reading, and you start to see the strange comfort inside the terror. Sheol doesn't play favorites. No rich section. No poor section. No VIP lounge for kings with a better view of the darkness. Down there, the world finally stops ranking people. The man who broke your heart and the man who saved your life both go down. The woman who fed the hungry and the woman who poisoned the well both go down. It's unfair and it's equal, and it's incredibly human to hate it. You feel a little anger rise up in you, quick and hot. So what's the point then? You catch yourself, because that's the kind of thought that spirals. The scribe isn't answering questions today. He's handing you the ancient shape of them. The scroll shifts again, and you catch more images. Sheol opens its mouth. It's described like a hunger, not a demon, a mouth. The ground itself becomes an eater. You think of sinkholes, of sudden collapses, of the way solid earth can betray you without warning. You picture walking along a familiar path and feeling the soil give way beneath your foot. A drop, a shout, dust exploding up as you fall. No time to be brave, no time to be good. just gravity doing what it does. That's what Sheol feels like in these words. A pull, not moral, physical. The scribe rolls the scroll back slightly, as if to keep you from drowning in it. He taps another line, gentler now. A plea to be rescued, not from torture, but from disappearance, from the pit, from the deep, from being swallowed by silence. You stare at the ink until it blurs slightly. Your eyes sting, maybe from smoke, maybe from something else. You shift again, and the straw pokes your hip through your clothing like it's trying to get your attention. Your body is so annoyingly alive. It aches, it itches, it wants water, and the scroll keeps talking about the place where bodies don't want anything ever again. A gust of wind pushes through the doorway and stirs the smoke. For a second, the room smells less like oil and more like outside. Dust, animals, baked stone. A reminder that the world is still spinning. You glance at the scribe. He's watching you with that same patient look, like, yes, this is what death looks like here. Not flames. A shut stone. A dark room under the world. Silence so complete you could scream forever and still hear only your own throat. You think about your original hell scrapbook, the red lighting, the screaming, the monsters with workplace hierarchy. It's almost busy. Sheol is worse in the way an empty hospital hallway at night is worse. No drama, just the hum of nothing. You run your finger along the edge of the scroll and feel the slight roughness of the hide. It's been handled by hands you'll never meet. Hands that lived, worked, bled, and disappeared. Their names might still be remembered for a while. Or not. That's the point, isn't it? The scribe pulls the scroll closer to himself and begins rolling it up with care. The hide curls back into itself, like it's relieved to stop speaking. He ties it with a cord, a simple knot. No ceremony. He stands, and you stand too, because sitting suddenly feels like admitting defeat. Your legs protest, stiff and sore. He leads you back outside. The sun has shifted, lower now, turning the dust in the air into a glowing haze. People move through the streets carrying water jars, baskets, burdens. A man argues with a merchant over something small. Because life is made of small arguments. Somebody laughs. It's startling, that laugh, like hearing music right after a long silence. It reminds you that living people can still make noise. The scribe walks with you toward the edge of town, not to the tombs this time, but to a place where you can see the ground fall away into a valley. You smell it before you fully register it. Smoke. Not the cozy smoke of cooking. This is harsher, dirtier, like burning scraps and old rags and things that should not be burned but are anyway. The scribe doesn't point yet. He just lets you stand there and take it in, because Sheol is down beneath every footstep, quiet, sealed, inevitable. But out there is something else people can point to. A place you can actually walk into while you're still breathing. The smoke rises in thin, ugly threads against the bright sky. Your eyes water, and you blink, and the scribe finally lifts his hand toward the valley, like he's introducing you to an unpleasant neighbor. Not Sheol, something different. A place with a name people say out loud, with their mouths still working, while they still can. The wind shifts, and the smoke punches you straight in the face. Not the friendly kind of smoke that means bread is happening. This is the smoke of wet scraps, old rags, and something that used to be useful before it became burn it quickly. You squint into the brightness, and the valley sits there like a bad idea that became a permanent neighborhood feature. Jerusalem behind you is all pale stone and sun glare, busy voices, holy stairs, Important men walking like their sandals are too good for dust. Out there, down the slope, the land drops away into a long, ugly crease. Rough rock, scrubby bushes, blackened patches where fires have been chewing on things for days. The scribe's hand is still raised, like he's introducing you to a relative nobody claims at weddings. His expression says, "You wanted a place with fire? Fine, we have one." People on the road glance that direction without even turning their heads. That's how familiar it is, like hearing dogs bark in the distance and not bothering to count how many. Somebody near you mutters a word, almost like a reflex. Not Sheol, not down, not the pit. Gehenna. It lands with a little thud in your stomach because it's not mystical. It's geography. You could walk there right now, in sandals, like a regular errand. Your feet start moving before your brain finishes protesting. The scribe follows, and you both head toward the gate, through the bustle of the city that smells like people, animals, and boiling something questionable. The closer you get to the edge, the less holy everything feels. The streets narrow, the stones get broken, and the vibe shifts from temple of the living God to municipal problem. A man passes you with a basket of peels and bones, not carried carefully, not treated with respect, just swung at knee height like he's late to dump it and doesn't care who gets clipped. He catches you looking and gives you the universal expression of, "What? It's trash." Then he keeps going. You follow him out, past the last tight houses. The air gets drier and sharper, and the smoke gets thicker, like the valley is breathing out through a cracked tooth. There's a path worn into the slope, and it's not a nice path. It's loose gravel and dung and those prickly little plants that exist purely to punish ankles. You step wrong once and skid half a foot. Your stomach lurches, and you grab at the air like the air is obligated to help. It doesn't. Nothing here helps unless you make it. Down in the valley, you finally see what's feeding the smoke. Not one big dramatic bonfire. Several smaller fires scattered like infections. One has a pile of broken pottery. Another is chewing on a stack of damp cloth that hisses and refuses to ignite properly, filling the air with a sour, choking stink. Near a third fire, something darker is burning. Not wood, not straw. The smell has that unmistakable edge of hair and fat. Your face does that involuntary thing, nose wrinkling, eyes watering, dignity leaving your body. You try breathing through your mouth. Congratulations, now you can taste it. A boy, maybe 10, pokes at a heap with a stick. He's barefoot, because of course he is, and his toes are black with soot. He's looking for something reusable, something sellable. A scavenger economy, right here in the valley of everybody's mistakes. You spot a thin dog nosing around too, ribs like a washboard, tail flicking like it's annoyed to be alive. No one is dressed fancy down here. The clean robes stayed in the city. A cart rattles by with a load of refuse. Rotting vegetables, cracked jars, old rope. Maybe a dead chicken that gave up. The cart's wheels squeal, and the donkey pulling it looks personally betrayed by existence. The man guiding it has cloth wrapped over his mouth. Not for fashion, for survival. He pauses near one of the fires and tips the cart. The whole pile slides out with a wet, embarrassing sound. The donkey snorts and steps sideways, like even it doesn't want to touch this place. The man prods it forward anyway. You stand there, watching, and your brain finally catches up. This isn't some far-off cosmic dungeon. This is the city's trash situation. This is what happens when thousands of people live close together, and nobody has invented modern sanitation or shame. The scribe steps beside you, and he's quiet. In that way that means Do you feel it now? Do you understand why everyone knows this name? Gehenna, the valley you can smell before you can see. A gust of wind rolls through, and the smoke shifts, revealing patches of ground that are darker than the rest, stained, charred, like the earth has been scrubbed with ash for centuries. And now we arrive at the part nobody wants to claim, but everybody remembers. Because this valley isn't just a dump, it's a memory with teeth. An older man down the slope is talking to someone, voice low, urgent. You don't mean to listen, you just can't not. He gestures with his chin toward a certain spot, tucked near a rock outcrop. Even from here, you can see a weird flat area, like a platform that's been used for things. The older man spits, like the valley deserves it. He says a word you recognize because it's traveled a long way through time and disgust. Moloch. Your skin tightens. People say it like they're trying to get it out of their mouths as fast as possible. No reverence, no fear like worship, fear like remembering. The scribe doesn't interrupt. He just guides you a few steps farther down, careful with his footing, because he's not trying to die in the municipal curse valley. He points, not dramatically. Just a small motion like, there. You look where he points, and you see it more clearly now. A place where the rocks form a rough bowl sheltered from the wind. Even if no fire burns there today, it feels like the air remembers smoke. It smells faintly of old ash and old grief. Your mind tries to refuse the image. It wants to go back to Sheol, honestly. At least Sheol was quiet. But this place was never quiet. You can almost hear it. Not as sound, but as a pressure. The kind of pressure you feel when you step into a room where something terrible happened, and everyone is pretending it didn't. This valley has a history of people doing the unthinkable and calling it devotion. You don't get to dress it up. You picture it happening because your brain is rude like that. Night, torches, the smell of pitch and sweat and panic, drums beating, loud enough to cover other sounds, not music, not celebration, noise as camouflage. A bronze shape, heated until it glows, arms outstretched like an invitation that makes your stomach turn. Men with serious faces, women not looking at each other, someone holding a bundle that moves. Your throat goes tight, you swallow, and it does nothing. This valley earned its reputation the hard way. People poured innocence into it and tried to call it holy. Later, kings tried to scrub it clean, to desecrate it, to make it unusable for that horror. They threw filth here. They broke things here. They made it a place nobody would choose for worship again. Good. Let it be the dump. Let it be where everything unwanted goes. Let the stink be a warning. The scribe's voice finally comes, quiet near your ear. Gehenna, he says, shaping the name like it's old on his tongue. The Valley of Hinnom. He doesn't give you a lecture. He doesn't need to. Your eyes are already doing it, scanning the valley, the smoke, the scavengers, the blackened ground. Your nose is already doing it, trying not to inhale. This is a place you can point at when you need an image for ruin, a place you can threaten someone with without getting mystical. And that's why, when a new teacher starts talking about fire, nobody in Judea imagines cartoon demons. They imagine this. A few days later, because time moves and your feet keep carrying you through it, you're back inside the city. The streets are even more crowded now. There's a rumor moving through the people, like a draft under a door. A teacher from Galilee, a healer, a troublemaker, a man who speaks like he has nothing to lose. You find the crowd by accident, the way you always find crowds, by following the noise and the smell of too many humans standing too close. You squeeze in until you can see him. He's not up on a platform with guards. He's just there, standing on slightly higher ground, dusty feet, sun on his face, eyes scanning people like he actually sees them. And he starts talking about anger. Not the fun, petty kind of anger. The kind you carry in your chest like a hot stone. The kind that leaks into your words until your mouth becomes a weapon. He talks about calling someone empty-headed, worthless, disposable. You hear the insult in the crowd's language, sharp and humiliating. He says it like it matters, like words are not harmless, like they stick. Then he drops the name, Gehenna. The crowd reacts, not with confusion, but with a murmur. A few heads turn instinctively, as if the valley is somehow visible through buildings. You feel it too, that mental turn. Smoke in your memory, the taste of burnt rags. He's not describing a fantasy. He's warning you with a location. Keep feeding that kind of contempt, and your life turns into the valley. Relationships become ash. Communities become refuse. Everything that should have been kept becomes something people dump and burn. The teacher keeps going, and now he's talking about bodies, eyes, hands, the parts of you that reach and grab and want. He talks about looking at someone with hunger, with taking in your mind before you ever take with your hands. You can feel the crowd tighten, because it's one thing to talk about laws and sacrifices. It's another thing to talk about what happens behind someone's eyes. He says something absolutely wild. If your eye causes you to stumble, tear it out. Tear it out. You blink hard because you're pretty attached to your eyes. They've been doing a lot for you lately, mostly avoiding donkey carts and noticing smoke. He says if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. A man near you actually touches his hand, like checking it's still there. Someone laughs, one short bark, because what else do you do when somebody suggests self-amputation as a productivity hack? The teacher doesn't laugh. He says it's better to lose a part than for your whole body to be thrown into Gehenna. Thrown into. Nobody in this crowd imagines a trapdoor opening beneath the earth to a demon spa. They imagine the slope outside the city. They imagine the fires. They imagine what happens to unwanted things. They imagine what happens to bodies when nobody claims them. You see it in their faces. They aren't thinking about metaphysics. They're thinking about shame, about being cast out, about becoming refuse. The teacher's voice doesn't get soft. It stays steady, like he's telling you the weather, and you'd better bring a cloak. Out here, sin isn't an idea. It's what your neighbor does to you, and what you do back when you're tired and mean and sure you're right. It's not a philosophical puzzle. It's what wrecks families. It's what turns neighbors into enemies. It's what makes a city rot from the inside until the only thing left is ash. The crowd disperses slowly when he pauses. People talk in low voices, like they've been handed a knife and told it's their own tongue. You drift with them through the city, and the day keeps happening. Vendors shout, kids run. A man squats by a wall and scrapes dirt from under his nails with a shard of pottery. A woman balances a jar on her shoulder, like gravity is a rumor. Normal life loud and stubborn. But the word Gehenna hangs around, like smoke in hair. You can wash, and it stays. Later, you catch him teaching again. Different day, different crowd. This time, it's not a hillside. It's a road, dusty and hard-packed, lined with stones that trip you if you get lazy. His followers are around him, a little too confident, like people who have decided they're on the winning side of history. They're still learning the ancient art of being wrong in public. He warns them about fear, not fear of wolves or thieves, fear of powerful men. He gestures back toward the city, toward the temple, toward the places where decisions are made by people with clean hands and complicated motives. He tells them not to be afraid of those who can kill the body and stop there. That lands heavy, because crucifixions are not theoretical. Rome makes examples out of people with alarming creativity. The road is quiet for a moment, like even the birds are listening. He says to fear the one who can destroy both body and life in Gehenna. Again, Gehenna. You don't see anyone look up at the sky searching for a cosmic furnace. You see people glance south, toward that valley crease outside Jerusalem. They know exactly what destroy looks like. They've smelled it. It's not just dying. It's being treated like waste. Your stomach rolls a little, because the image is so physical. It's the difference between being laid in a tomb with spices and cloth and being tossed onto a heap where dogs fight over bones. The teacher keeps walking, and the crowd shuffles after him. Sandals scrape. Someone coughs because the dust gets in everywhere. Nobody wants to admit it, but everyone is tracking the valley in their mind. Gehenna isn't a far-off threat. It's 5 minutes outside the gate and one bad collapse away. Another time, because he keeps doing this, he keeps returning to the same ugly image. You hear him again talking about stumbling, not tripping over a rock, tripping over your own desires, your own pride, your own urge to be the main character at everyone else's expense. Children are nearby this time. A few little ones sitting in the shade, dirt on their faces, listening with the intense focus children have when the adults stop pretending. The teacher points at them. He warns the grown men with beards and opinions, about causing little ones to stumble, about crushing the weak with carelessness and calling it leadership. He says it would be better for someone to be thrown into the sea with a millstone around their neck. A millstone. You've seen one. Heavy, rough, designed to crush grain into flour. You picture it tied to your neck. Your lungs tighten in sympathy. He's not done. He swings back to the body imagery again. Hands, feet, eyes. Cut it off. Tear it out. Throw it away. Because it's better to enter life maimed than to have 2 hands and go to Gehenna. Gehenna again. Always Gehenna. He doesn't say, because demons will poke you. He doesn't describe a torture chamber with schedules and chains. He points people toward the valley they all know. The valley that exists as a warning sign carved into the landscape. And now he adds a detail that makes the whole crowd go still. He talks about the fire not being quenched, not being put out. You've seen fires in Gehenna that keep eating because the city keeps feeding them. There is always more refuse, always more broken things, always more filth. He talks about worms that do not die. That gets a visible flinch, because everyone here knows worms. They've seen what happens to meat left out too long. They've seen the way decay has a workforce. In Gehenna, where refuse piles and bodies sometimes end up, worms are not a metaphor. They're an employee. A woman nearby presses her lips together hard, like she's trying to hold in a gag. A man scratches his beard, eyes distant. Nobody is thinking, this is such rich symbolism. They're thinking, I have seen that. I have smelled that. The teacher's voice carries through the dry air, and it's steady, relentless. It's like he's holding up the valley and saying, this is where your choices lead if you keep feeding what's rotten. Keep feeding contempt, lust, violence, and greed, and your life starts smelling like this valley. Smoke in your hair, ash in your throat, people stepping around you like you're part of the refuse pile, and the crowd, tired and sunburned and brutally familiar with death, understands him in their bones. Still, it's one thing to warn villagers on a road. It's another thing to walk into Jerusalem and say it to the faces that run the place, When he comes to the city, the air changes. Jerusalem always feels tighter, like the stones themselves are listening. There are more rules here, more eyes, more men whose robes are clean in a way that feels aggressive. You can spot them easily because they move like they own the ground. The teacher stands near the temple courts at one point, and the crowd forms in that semicircle shape. Crowds always form when they're hungry for a spectacle. He looks at the leaders, scribes, teachers, the polished ones, and he speaks like someone kicking a beehive on purpose. He calls them hypocrites. He calls them blind guides. People around you gasp softly because this is not safe language in this location. This is career-ending language. He says they travel over land and sea to make one convert. That line draws a few nods because everyone knows the type. The energetic recruiter, the person who won't stop pitching you their spiritual pyramid scheme. Then he says, when they make a convert, they make him twice as much a child of Gehenna as themselves. Child of Gehenna. That phrase hits different than going to Gehenna. It's not just destination, it's identity, a child of that valley, a person shaped by it, a person who belongs to the place where innocence was burned and refuse smolders. A man in the crowd makes a small noise of disgust, not loud enough to be punished, just enough to be honest. The teacher keeps going, and the leader's faces harden. The air feels brittle, like pottery that's been fired too long. Later, another day, another crowd pressed into the streets like grain packed into a sack. You hear him say it again. This time his voice is sharper. His words crack like a whip. He calls them snakes, a brood of vipers. You can almost hear the intake of breath from everyone listening, that shared sound of, "Oh no, you can't say that." He looks at them and asks how they will escape the judgment of Gehenna, not escape the judgment of Rome, not escape embarrassment, not escape a bad reputation. Gehenna. Again, he's not pointing at a mystical underworld. He's pointing at a very real, very nearby valley that already functions as a picture of what happens when corruption is fed long enough. Because Jerusalem isn't immune to becoming its own dump. Not when leaders devour widows and polish the outside of cups while the inside is filth. The teacher's words feel like someone knocking on a sealed door and saying, "You can keep pretending you're clean, but I can smell the smoke." And everyone can. You keep finding that word, Gehenna, in his mouth at the most uncomfortable times. When he talks about anger that turns people into garbage in your eyes. When he talks about lust that treats bodies like objects to consume. When he talks about fear and power and what you'll do to survive. He returns to it like a refrain because it works, because it's local. He could have threatened people with Sheol, the silent down. But Sheol is too equal, too quiet, too inevitable. Gehenna is what you do to yourselves before you ever die. You walk again, later, down toward the valley, because you can't help it. The word keeps dragging your attention back there. The fires are still burning, though not as dramatic as your imagination wants. They crackle and hiss and smoke like stubborn chores that never end. A man tosses a bucket of something onto a heap. It splatters. The smell is immediate and violent. You step back without thinking, hand flying up to your nose. The scribe beside you doesn't react. He's used to it, which is somehow worse. A pair of flies land on your cheek and refuse to leave. You wave them off, and they circle back like tiny, stupid boomerangs. Near the edge of a refuse pile, you spot bones. Small ones, probably animal. You tell yourself that quickly. You tell yourself it with enthusiasm. Your eyes flick away anyway, because your mind remembers the older stories that live under this valley's name. And because sometimes, in a city this crowded, a body can become inconvenient fast. The valley isn't official. It isn't clean. It's the place for what doesn't fit inside the walls. You climb a little higher, away from the thickest smoke, and you look back at Jerusalem. From here, the city looks almost beautiful. Stone walls catching sunlight, the temple shining like it's trying to compete with the sun itself. You can hear distant voices, faint music, the metallic clink of something being carried. And right beside it, right beside all that, this valley sits like a shadow. Not supernatural, not hidden, just there. That's why, when the teacher says Gehenna, nobody hears a fantasy realm. They hear a warning with soot under its fingernails. They hear, don't become refuse. Don't make others refuse. Don't build a society that eats its children, whether by fire or by hunger or by cruelty dressed as righteousness. They hear, the fire you feed will keep burning. The worms will keep working, because that's what happens when rot is allowed to pile up. You stand there until the wind shifts again and sends a fresh wave of smoke up the slope. Your eyes sting. Your throat tastes like ash. The scribe starts walking back toward the city, and you follow, because the valley is not a place you linger unless you have to. Behind you, a fire crackles. Something collapses inward with a soft, wet sound. A dog barks once, then goes quiet. Up ahead, Jerusalem's gates swallow people in and out endlessly. Life moving, trash piling, fires burning. And that word, Gehenna, sticks to your mind like smoke to cloth, because it's not about some far-off cave under the universe. It's a valley outside the wall, a place you can actually visit, a place that has seen what humans will do and keeps burning anyway. The sun is higher now, and your clothes feel like they've absorbed the entire city. Smoke from the valley still clings to you, tucked into your hair and the seams of your tunic. You walk through Jerusalem's gate with that smell trailing behind like a bad reputation. Inside the walls, people are doing what people do, buying, selling, shouting, pretending they're not sweating. A fishmonger waves a knife like it's a personality trait. Somewhere nearby, a donkey empties its soul onto the street with no shame at all. You step around it because you enjoy having toes. And then the Greeks show up, or rather, their language does. It hits you in little ways at first. A scrap of conversation from a merchant with a coastal accent. A word on a coin that isn't yours. A sign scratched into plaster that looks like someone tried to write Hebrew and gave up halfway. You turn a corner and there it is again. Greek, flowing and tidy, like it's never had to wrestle a stubborn goat. You feel the weird whiplash of it, because you're still in a city with a temple and priests and incense, but the air is full of foreign syllables, smooth as olive oil. You follow the sound out of curiosity, which is always how trouble starts. It leads you to a busier street where the crowd has that mixed look. Locals, travelers, people who belong nowhere and everywhere. A man is arguing with another man, loud enough for the whole block. The gestures are big, theatrical, like he's trying to win a play. You catch words you know, names, places, and then one word you definitely know, but not from here. Hades. It lands in your ear like a pebble, small but sudden, and you can't stop rolling it around in your mind. Because Hades is not a valley outside Jerusalem. Hades is not the pit your grandfathers muttered about. Hades is Greek. Hades comes with baggage, a whole wagon of baggage. You've heard Greek stories in ports, told by sailors who smell like wine, salt, and regret. They talk about the underworld the way men talk about a tavern. They swear they'll never enter again. A place beneath the world. Gates, shadows, judges, rivers with names that sound like curses, a ferryman with a face like dried leather who won't move without payment. You're standing in Jerusalem, trying to buy bread that won't break your teeth, and suddenly your ears are full of Greek underworld geography. Your brain does that little stumble it does when two worlds collide. You drift closer to the argument, mostly because the crowd is blocking your path anyway. The men are gesturing like their arms are getting paid by the swing. One of them, thick beard, sunburned nose, spits to the side and says Hades again. Not reverently, not fearfully, casually, like he's talking about the weather being bad at sea. The other man responds fast in Greek, and you catch a few phrases. Something about the dead, something about judgment. You feel your eyebrows inch up. Judgment, sure. People love judgment. It's the closest thing to entertainment some days. But the word choice is what makes your skin prickle. Because back in the old stories you've been trudging through, people went down to Sheol. Down, silent, dusty, no ferrymen, no rivers, no three-headed dog guarding anything. Just the slow, blank unraveling of you. Hades, though. Hades is an entire tourist brochure of dread. You keep moving, because staying in the middle of an argument is a great way to get accidentally punched. Your shoulder brushes another passerby, and you catch a whiff of olive oil, sweat, and garlic so strong it could ward off demons. The street opens up toward a public space where foreigners gather more easily. You see it in the clothing, shorter tunics, different cuts, brighter dyes. Someone walks past wearing a little bronze charm shaped like a tiny god. It taps against his chest as he moves, like it's keeping time. Another man wears a ring with a carved stone. He holds his hand, out while talking, like the ring deserves to speak too. You feel the city stretching around you. Jerusalem is still Jerusalem, but it's also not. In one corner, you hear Hebrew prayers. In another, Greek laughter. You watch a scribe seated in shade, bent over a scroll, stylus moving like a nervous insect. He's writing Greek, not scratching quick notes, writing carefully, shaping each letter like it matters. His ink smells sharp, metallic, and faintly sour. The parchment smells like animal, because it is animal, no matter how holy the words are. You stand there too long, and the scribe glances up at you. His eyes flick to your face, and then away again, dismissing you the way scribes dismiss everyone who isn't a scribe. You want to ask him why. Why Greek, here, in the middle of everything? But you already know the answer, because it's walking past you in sandals. The world got bigger. Empires happened. Roads got built. Coins changed hands. People started doing business in Greek the way people do business in whatever language gets you paid. So now, sacred words have to travel through Greek mouths. And that's where your problem begins. Because when you take an old Hebrew idea, Sheol, the silent down, and you dress it in a Greek word, Hades, you don't just translate, you import. And the luggage comes too. You import the whole Greek mental picture, like bringing home an exotic pet and insisting it will live peacefully with your goats. You move through the city, and it keeps happening. Greek phrases, Greek names, Greek jokes you don't understand, but can tell are crude from the laughter. A group of men pass carrying a stretcher, with someone groaning on it. They're speaking Greek too, fast and stressed. The sick man's skin is waxy and damp. He smells like fever and old linen, and the fear people try to sweat out. You step back to give them room. They don't thank you. They don't even look. Life here doesn't pause for anyone's existential confusion. You head toward a smaller gathering, drawn by that familiar rhythm. A teacher speaking. People listening with that half-hungry expression. Not hungry for bread, hungry for meaning. You squeeze in, shoulder to shoulder, and the smell is immediate. Unwashed hair, stale breath, wool warmed by bodies. Somebody near you has been eating onions. It's like standing beside an edible weapon. The speaker is talking in Greek, but slower than the marketplace. Careful, like he knows some listeners are catching only half of it. He's telling a story. You recognize the shape of it right away. Not a law, not a debate. A story meant to stick in your ribs. He describes a rich man. You can practically see him as the words come out. Plump hands, smooth beard, clothes that don't smell like work. Purple fabric, the expensive kind. The kind of purple that screams, "I have never carried my own water in my entire life." The speaker adds, "Linen, bright and clean." You almost laugh. Clean linen in this world is basically a miracle. You know what it takes to keep fabric white when everything around you is dust, smoke, sweat, and donkey. The rich man feasts every day. Not had enough. Not ate well. Feasts. Your stomach does that little twitch of resentment on behalf of every person who has ever chewed tough bread and called it dinner. At the rich man's gate lies a poor man named Lazarus, and the speaker doesn't let it be tidy. He says Lazarus is covered in sores. Not a rash, not a little scrape. Sores. Open, ugly, weeping places where your body is failing in public. You can smell it in your imagination, because you've smelled it in real life. A sour rot smell, mixed with sweat and old blood, and whatever someone tried to smear on it to help. The dogs come, not the nice kind of dog, the street kind. Mangy coats, sharp ribs. The kind of dog that looks at you like you're either food or competition. They lick his sores. You flinch hard because it's disgusting and because it's weirdly intimate. No family tending him, no friend cleaning him. Just dogs doing what dogs do, tongues rasping over broken skin. Lazarus longs to eat what falls from the rich man's table. Not what's served. What falls, crumbs, drippings, bits of bread used to wipe greasy fingers. And nobody gives him even that. You can feel the crowd listening. Some are angry. Some look tired. Some look like they've been Lazarus or stepped over him or both. Then the speaker's voice shifts. Both men die. Just like that. No warning. No soft landing. One day you're eating. One day you're leaking sores. And then you're dead. Lazarus is carried by angels to Abraham's side. It's a comforting image, almost gentle. You picture being lifted, finally clean, finally not hungry, resting near the ancestor everyone claims. The rich man is buried. Of course he is. Of course the rich man gets the good burial. Cloth, spices, a tomb, people saying polite things pretending they liked him. And then, because the story is not done with him, he opens his eyes in Hades. There it is again, that Greek word, Hades. You feel the crowd tense, because now the story has teeth. The rich man is in torment. He looks up and sees Abraham far away, with Lazarus beside him. And you realize what the speaker is doing. He's building a scene with distance, not just moral distance, physical, a separation you can see. The rich man calls out, "Father Abraham." He still thinks the family name is a key that opens doors. He still thinks belonging means entitlement. He begs for Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool his tongue. Just the tip, just one drop. And that's when it hits you. This rich man, who feasted daily, is now bargaining for moisture, for the smallest mercy. You've been thirsty in Judea. You know thirst. You know that dry, cracking feeling in your mouth, like your tongue has turned into old leather. You know the way your lips split and sting. You can almost feel him licking his teeth and finding nothing. Abraham answers him, calm and terrible. "Child," he says. "Child, not stranger, not enemy. Child." He reminds him that in his lifetime, he received good things and Lazarus bad things. Now Lazarus is comforted. Now the rich man is in anguish. And then Abraham adds the detail that turns the whole scene into an architectural nightmare. Between them is a great chasm fixed, set, not moving. No bridges, no ladders, no helpful rope. People cannot cross from there to here or here to there. The rich man panics. He begs Abraham to send Lazarus back to warn his brothers so they won't end up here too. Because suddenly, he remembers other people exist. Abraham refuses. They have Moses and the prophets, he says. Let them hear them. The rich man argues, because even in Hades he's still trying to negotiate. He insists that if someone comes back from the dead, his brothers will repent. Abraham's answer is simple and brutal. If they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't be convinced even if someone rises from the dead. The story ends there, hanging in the air like smoke that won't clear. The crowd murmurs. You stand very still because your mind is racing, but your body doesn't want to move. This is the most detailed afterlife scene you've heard in these stories so far. It has dialogue, it has scenery, it has a chasm and thirst and comfort and distance, and it uses Hades, Greek Hades. Your brain tries to hold it with both hands, and it starts slipping, because you've heard other travelers' tales too. Late at night, in a roadside inn that smells like sour wine and wet wool, you once heard a man from Egypt tell a story. He had a shaved head and a little amulet around his neck. He spoke of a rich man and a poor man. He spoke of the dead discovering their fate reversed. He made the listeners gasp at the same parts. Luxury turning into hunger, status turning into pleading. Different names, different decorations, same bitter punch. At the time, you chalked it up to people everywhere loving a good revenge story. But standing here, hearing this teacher speak of chasms and torment and comfort across distance, it feels familiar in a way that makes your scalp prickle. Like the world is a marketplace of stories too. Like ideas travel on feet and ships. You look around at the listeners. Some are Judeans, nodding with grim satisfaction at the rich man getting what's coming. Some are Greek-speaking Jews from farther away, brows furrowed, absorbing this in their own mental images. And some are straight-up Gentiles, wearing Greek haircuts and smelling faintly of wine. When they hear Hades, they aren't picturing Sheol. They're picturing the Greek underworld. They're picturing a cave mouth in the earth where cold air pours out. They're picturing a river with black water and a boat that never stops moving. They're picturing a guard dog with too many heads and not enough patience. You can practically hear the coin clink in their imagination. That's the vertigo. Not that people talk about the dead. People have always talked about the dead. It's that one word can drag an entire mythology behind it, like a cart full of stones. You leave the crowd and walk, because standing still makes it worse. Your feet take you toward a busier district where foreigners are thickest. There's a little plaza with a fountain that looks like someone tried to make beauty happen in a world determined to be sticky. Children run around it, shrieking. A man stands nearby selling little clay lamps. His hands are black with soot, nails rimmed with dirt that will never come out. You pass him and catch the smell of hot oil and singed wick. He calls out in Greek, offering you a deal like you're his favorite cousin. You keep going. You find yourself near a place where a few Greeks are gathered, talking loudly, as Greeks seem physically unable not to do. One of them is telling a story with dramatic pauses. You don't catch all of it, but you hear a familiar set of names drift through. Hades, Persephone, a river. The men laugh, then shudder, like the story is meant to be both funny and awful. You edge closer, trying to understand. A big man with a red nose mentions Tartarus, and the group reacts like he just described the worst basement anyone has ever been forced to enter. Tartarus. A deeper place. A darker place. They talk about judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus. Like the underworld has bureaucracy. Of course it does. Even death can't escape paperwork, apparently. You step back because listening feels like eavesdropping on someone else's nightmare. But the names cling to you anyway. In your mind, Hades now has hallways. It has gates with iron bars. It has administrators. And you realize what's happening in the air around you, in this blended city under empire. Jewish teachers are speaking in Greek to Greek-speaking crowds. They reach for the Greek word that fits best in a sentence, and the word they grab is Hades, not because they want to teach Greek myths, because they need a word that lands. They need something that means realm of the dead. And Hades is sitting right there, common as a market coin. But the listeners don't hear realm of the dead. They hear the whole Greek underworld. You walk past a little shrine built into a wall. A niche with a small figure inside, smeared with old oil and smoke. Someone has left a garland that's already wilting, the leaves curling like dry tongues. A fly crawls over the offering. You feel that familiar discomfort again. Too many worlds stacked on top of each other, like mismatched bowls. You turn down a narrower street where the smells intensify. A tannery nearby is doing its work, and the stink is aggressive. Wet hide, urine, that sharp bite of lime. It's the smell of animals being turned into something useful, and you hate that you need it. Sandals, belts, scrolls. Everything comes from something that once had a heartbeat. Two men carry a bundle of hides past you, dripping. A drop hits the ground and splatters your foot. You lift your sandal and inspect it like you can shame it into being clean. It doesn't work. You hear raised voices ahead and follow them. Because again, curiosity is your downfall. A small group is arguing near a doorway. This time, it's not about fish prices or taxes. It's about resurrection. You know the tone immediately. That heated, bright-eyed tone of people fighting over what happens after the grave. One man insists the dead rise. Another scoffs. A third throws up his hands in frustration, like he's trying to physically throw the argument away. And then someone says it. Hades, again. Not as a story setting now, as a point in a debate. Hades will give up the dead, someone insists. Hades cannot hold them forever. You see heads nod. In Greek ears, that sounds like the underworld itself coughing up its captives, like chains breaking, like gates cracking. In Hebrew ears, it's Sheol getting a new outfit and a new accent. Same destination, different decor. You stand there and feel your mind stretch, because in the old songs, Sheol was a place you feared because it was quiet, because it erased you. In Greek tales, Hades is feared because it is organized, because it is active, because it has rooms. One is an empty darkness. The other is a populated underground city of shadows. Both are bleak, but they're bleak in different flavors. You push away from the argument because it's starting to make your temples ache. The sun beats on the stone, and the heat rises up from the street like a sigh. You spot a man sitting against a wall, eyes closed, lips moving. Praying, softly, his hands are calloused, fingers stained. A laborer. His prayer is in Greek. You pause, listening. He speaks of God with reverence, but the words feel different in Greek, like they've put on a new garment. Still sacred, just tailored. He speaks of hope, of the dead, and again, Hades is the word sitting there, ready to carry the weight. You keep walking until the city noise blurs into a constant roar. A cart rattles past and splashes through a puddle you didn't see. The puddle hits your shin. It's warm. You don't want to know why it's warm. You wipe your leg with the edge of your tunic and immediately regret it. Now your tunic is warm too. You end up near a place where travelers gather, an inn or something like it. It smells like sour wine and fried oil and people who have slept in the same clothes for a week. A man at a table is telling a tale, gesturing with a cup. His voice is loud, and his Greek is thick with an accent. He talks about a philosopher who mocked the gods and what happened after death. He says Hades like it's a punchline. The listeners laugh, then groan, then laugh again. You sit at the edge of the room, not because you want to, but because your feet are tired and the bench is there. A serving girl slaps down a cup in front of you. The cup is clay, chipped at the rim. The drink smells like vinegar that had a dream of being wine. You take a cautious sip. It tastes like disappointment and old grapes. You listen to the talk around you. A sailor mentions throwing a coin onto a dead man's tongue. A ferryman, he says. He makes a little paddling gesture with his hand, mocking, but he also touches his amulet when he thinks no one notices. Another man says his grandmother used to leave honey cakes for the dead. To keep them sweet, he says, like the dead are children. Someone else snorts and says nothing keeps the dead sweet. The room laughs. You think of Lazarus with dogs licking his sores. You think of the rich man begging for a drop of water. You think of Sheol's silence, the way it swallowed kings and beggars alike. And now, layered over all of it, you have Greek stories with coins and ferrymen and honey cakes. It's like someone keeps repainting the same wall, and every layer shows through. Later, you step back out into the street. Night has come, and with it, that cooler air that makes you feel human again. Torches burn along the road, their smoke curling upward. You walk past a little group gathered around a fire. Faces lit from below, eyes bright, shadows dancing. Someone is telling the Lazarus story again. You hear it from a distance, the rich man, the poor man, the chasm. You hear the crowd react at the same moments. A hiss at the dogs, a low murmur at the reversal. And when the teller says Hades, you watch the faces. Some look satisfied, like justice has been served hot. Some look uneasy. A Greek man in the back frowns, like he's picturing a different Hades than the Judean beside him. You can see it, almost physically. 2 listeners, 1 word, 2 underworlds. You keep walking because your head is full and your body is tired. The stone streets feel harder at night. A dog trots past you with something in its mouth. It's too dark to see what it is. You decide you don't care and continue living your life. You reach a quieter stretch of wall where the city noise thins. You can hear your own sandals scuff. In the distance, beyond the walls, you can smell faint smoke again. Gehenna, still doing its job, still chewing through refuse like a patient monster. You stop and lean against the cool stone. It steals the heat from your back. Your mind drifts through the words like a hand through water. Sheol, silent, equal, down. Gehenna, smoke, fire, shame, right outside the gate. And now Hades, Greek, crowded, talkative, full of imagery you didn't grow up with. The strange part isn't that people fear death. The strange part is watching a word carry different fears into different ears. You think of the scribes writing Greek letters with careful hands. You think of teachers telling stories that land in bellies. You think of how easy it is for a picture to slip. A valley becomes a cosmic furnace in someone's imagination. A silent pit becomes a mythic underworld with rivers and judges and gates. One word, and suddenly the dead aren't just asleep in dust. They're standing in line. You push off the wall and walk again. Farther ahead, Someone is talking about visions, about beasts, about thrones, about fire that doesn't behave like normal fire. You don't join that crowd yet. You just hear the fragments as you pass, wild language, fevered images, and you catch one phrase that makes your stomach dip. Death and Hades. Together, like they're separate things. Like Hades is not the final answer, but a character that can be dealt with. You keep walking, the night air cool on your face, the stones steady under your feet. Behind you, the city breathes, voices, footsteps, the occasional cough. Beyond the walls, the valley smoulders, and somewhere in the middle of all of it, the word Hades hangs in the air, heavy with imported meaning, waiting for the next storyteller to pick it up and aim it like a warning. But there's one more place you need to visit, the strangest one, the one that shows up at the very end of everything, like a final curtain drop, a place nobody can point to outside the city walls, a place you can't walk to in sandals. You hear about it first the same way you've heard about everything else lately, through rumor, through a crowd, through somebody talking too loudly near a fire. John saw it, someone says, eyes too bright. John, someone else scoffs. John who? The one on the island, the first insists, like there's only one island and only one John. You linger at the edge of the group because your life has become an ongoing series of bad decisions powered by curiosity. Somebody has a scroll, not a nice one, not crisp and new. This one looks handled. The edges are soft. The surface is grimy where fingers have worried it. It smells like skin and oil and the faint sourness of damp storage. They're reading it in Greek because, of course, they are. Greek is the Empire's language, and also the language of anyone who wants their words to travel farther than the next village. You squeeze into the room where it's being read. It's not a synagogue, not a temple courtyard. It's a house, and not the kind with space. The ceiling is low. The air is thick with lamp smoke, sweat, and that sharp tang of bodies packed too close. Someone near you has a wool cloak that hasn't met fresh water in a long time. A baby fusses, then gets shushed with the desperation of someone trying not to be noticed by the whole world. A dog somewhere outside barks like it's offended by human spirituality. The reader clears his throat. It's a wet, phlegmy sound. He's been sick, or he's been yelling, or both. He starts anyway, and immediately you can tell this is not a calm letter about community announcements and who needs help with the olive harvest. This is a door getting kicked off its hinges. The words come fast, vivid, almost rude, with imagery, a voice like a trumpet, a man like fire, eyes like flames, feet like bronze. You blink because your brain tries to build the picture and nearly drops it. This isn't a neat teaching you can tuck into your belt pouch. This is a fever dream with a message. The room leans in. Everyone is listening like they're thirsty, and the only water is these words. Some of them look afraid, some look hungry. You realize why. When you live under empire, when soldiers can decide your day with a glance, hope has to come in a form that can survive being whispered. So it arrives dressed like a nightmare and a parade at the same time. The reader keeps going, and your mind is dragged with it. A door in heaven, a throne. Someone seated, radiant and terrible, like sunlight that forgot how to be gentle. Around the throne are flashes of lightning. Your shoulders tighten automatically, like you're about to hear real thunder roll over the hills. There are creatures, 4 of them, covered in eyes, eyes in front, eyes behind, eyes where you'd put dignity. You try to picture it and immediately regret it. It's like describing a goat that's also a chandelier. They don't stop, they don't rest. They keep saying holy, like it's the only word left in existence. You feel the room's breath change. Somebody swallows hard. A few people murmur assent, like they're steadying themselves by making sound. The reader's voice dips lower. A scroll appears, sealed shut, stubbornly closed, tied up with 7 seals like someone really didn't want anyone peeking. And nobody can open it. Not in heaven, not on earth, not under the earth. You feel that phrase land heavy because you've been under the earth in your thoughts lately. Sheol, Hades, the whole gloomy basement of the universe. The reader pauses, letting the hopelessness sit there. Then he says a lamb appears. A lamb, but not cute. This one looks slain and still standing, like violence tried and failed to finish the job. 7 horns, 7 eyes. Your brain makes a noise like a door creaking. In the room, someone exhales in shaky relief, because they know this part. They've been waiting for the turn. The lamb takes the scroll. The creatures with too many eyes start singing. Elders in crowns fall down. Gold bowls of incense fill the air in your imagination, and for a moment you can almost taste it. Sweet, resinous smoke curling up. The seals begin to break. You've heard people read this part before, out loud, in the way someone might recite a storm warning. But hearing it in a packed room, with lamp smoke stinging your eyes, it feels immediate. A horse appears, white, a rider with a bow, then red, war, and a sword big enough to make your spine tense, then black, scales, bread measured out like everyone's suddenly on a ration plan. You can smell stale barley again, that hard loaf you have to negotiate with. Then pale, death, riding like it owns the road. Your stomach tightens when the reader says the rider's name, Death. And with death comes Hades, following behind like a shadow that has learned Greek. You feel a few people shift. That word still hits strange, like foreign grit between teeth. The visions keep stacking. Souls under an altar crying out. Earthquakes. The sun going dark, like someone snuffed it with wet fingers. Stars falling. Not one star, not a comet. Stars, plural, falling like fruit shaken loose. You've picked figs. You know how they drop. Soft thuds, splitting open, spilling sweetness and seeds. Now take that motion and apply it to the sky. It's absurd. It's terrifying. It's also, weirdly, the kind of image that makes everyone in the room nod like, yes, that's what it feels like to live like this. Because when the world is unstable, you start thinking in cosmic terms. Your daily fear gets too big for your house. It needs the whole sky. The reader's voice keeps pushing forward. Trumpets blast. Hail and fire come down mixed with blood. A mountain, burning, gets thrown into the sea. The sea turns to blood, and fish die, and ships are wrecked. You can almost smell it. Salt water gone metallic, rotting algae, dead fish bloating under sun. The kind of stench that sticks to your throat. A star called Wormwood falls, and the waters turn bitter. People drink and die, because even water can betray you. Locusts come up from a pit, not normal locusts. These have faces like humans, hair like women, teeth like lions, and tails like scorpions. You look down at your own arms like they might suddenly sprout extra parts. Someone in the room gives a nervous laugh that dies instantly. Because what do you even do with that image? You can't fight it. You can't file a complaint. You can't even ask it to leave. It's apocalypse at full volume. Everything huge, everything amplified, everything screaming the truth through smoke and lamp stink. The visions shift again. A woman appears, clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, a crown of 12 stars. She's pregnant, crying out in pain, and you wince because childbirth is its own apocalypse. You've heard it through thin walls at night, the groans, the panting, the sharp animal fear. A dragon waits to devour her child. A dragon, red, enormous, with 7 heads and 10 horns. 7 heads means 7 mouths, 7 sets of teeth, 7 opportunities for bad breath. His tail sweeps 1/3 of the stars out of the sky, like he's clearing a table with his elbow. The room goes still. You hear the lamp wick sputter. Someone shifts their foot and the packed reeds on the floor crackle. The child is snatched away to safety. The woman flees into the wilderness. War breaks out in heaven. Even heaven gets dragged into this. A mighty angel fights the dragon. The dragon loses, gets thrown down, and crashes into earth like a cosmic tantrum. You feel your shoulders tighten again, because the point is clear, even if the imagery is wild. Sometimes evil doesn't leave politely. Sometimes it has to be hurled. The dragon, furious, goes after the woman. The earth helps her. Swallowing a river, the dragon spews out like he's trying to drown her with sheer spite. You think about the ground under your sandals, solid and dusty, and the idea of it opening its mouth. It's too much. It's also exactly what fear feels like, your safe things becoming mouths. The dragon turns to make war on the rest of her offspring. In the room, a few people lift their chins, not bravely exactly, more like stubbornly, the way you lift your chin when someone spits at your feet and you refuse to flinch. Then you get the beasts, because of course you do. One comes up out of the sea, again, with the 7 heads and 10 horns, like the dragon started a family business. Its body is a patchwork, leopard, bear, lion, like someone stitched together every nightmare that's ever chased a shepherd at night. It has authority. It speaks big, blasphemous words. People worship it, because people will worship anything that looks unstoppable. Another beast comes from the earth. This one looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. It performs signs. It makes fire fall from heaven. You can almost see it. Crowd gasping, eyes wide, people grabbing each other's sleeves like children at a street performance. It forces people to take a mark, on the hand, on the forehead, a small, simple sign that decides whether you eat or starve. You glance down at your own hands. Your palms are rough, creased with work. You imagine them branded, marked, claimed. The air in the room grows heavier. Somebody coughs, and it sounds too loud, like they're afraid sound itself might be reported. The reader moves on, and the images keep coming in waves. Bowls of wrath poured out like someone finally had enough. Sores on bodies, water turning to blood again, fresh water too, because why stop at the sea? The sun scorching people with heat, and still they curse instead of soften. Darkness over the beast kingdom, people gnawing their tongues in pain. You wince at that detail. Teeth on tongue, blood, swelling, the copper taste, the stupid regret after you bite too hard and realize you have to live with your own mouth. Rivers dry up. Kings gather for battle. A city, Babylon, parades through the visions like a jeweled nightmare. She's dressed in purple and scarlet, dripping gold and pearls. She's drunk on blood, and she sits on a beast like she's taking it for a casual ride. You can smell her perfume in your mind, heavy, sweet, covering rot, the kind of scent that sticks to your nose and makes you suspicious of everyone wearing it. She boasts she'll never see sorrow. You've met people like that. They're always the ones who fall the loudest. Her fall comes fast. Merchants weep because their luxury market just died. Shipmasters stand far off, watching smoke rise, crying out because nobody's buying their cargo anymore. Gold, silver, spices, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet, cinnamon, incense, myrrh, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, chariots. And then the reader says it, and the room flinches like one body. Human souls, cargo. You feel your stomach twist, because the grossest part is how casually it's listed. Like sacks of grain, like jars of oil, like people are just inventory. Babylon falls, and a cheer ripples through the room, soft but real. Not because they love destruction, because they are tired of being crushed. The reader's voice rises again. A rider appears on a white horse. His eyes are like flame. On his head are many crowns. His robe is dipped in blood, and you don't get the comforting version of that image. Blood smells like iron and wet pennies. It clings to cloth. It turns dark and sticky, stiffening as it dries. Armies follow him, also on white horses, wearing linen so clean it feels illegal. A sword comes out of his mouth. Not out of his hand, out of his mouth. You swallow, because words can cut, and you felt it. You've been sliced open by a sentence someone tossed off like nothing. The beast and the kings of the earth gather to fight. It's the kind of showdown your heart expects. Clashing metal, screaming horses, dust clouds, somebody getting stabbed in the thigh and making that awful surprised noise. Instead, it ends like a trap snapping shut. The beast is seized, the false prophet too, and they're thrown alive into something called the lake of fire. The words land, and for a moment your brain stalls. A lake is supposed to be water. A lake is supposed to be relief, coolness, washing, fishing, dipping sore feet. This is a lake, except it's fire. A whole body of flame. A reservoir of burning. A pool you can't put out. It burns with sulfur. You know sulfur. You've smelled it near hot springs and strange vents in the earth. Places where the ground breathes out stink like it's sick. It's sharp, eggy, bitter. It catches in your throat and makes your eyes water. It's the smell of a place you don't linger. Now take that smell and make it a lake. A whole lake of it, simmering and roaring. The room is silent. Even the baby has stopped fussing. Like infants also understand when the imagery has gotten out of hand. The reader doesn't pause long. He keeps going, because Revelation never asks if you're okay. It just keeps handing you bigger pictures until your arms give out. The rest are slain by the rider's sword. Birds gorge on flesh. You've seen birds pick clean a carcass outside the city. They hop in, bold, ripping at meat, jerking their heads back to swallow. They fight over scraps with ugly little squawks. It's not poetic. It's just nature being nature. Now that image is scaled up to armies. Your stomach churns. You can almost hear wings flapping, thousands of them, like a storm made of feathers. The reader's voice shifts again. An angel comes down with a key and a chain. A chain, because apparently even cosmic evil can be treated like an animal that needs tying. The dragon is seized, that ancient serpent, the devil, Satan. Names piling on like everyone has a different way of spitting the same curse. He's bound for 1,000 years and thrown into a pit, shut up, sealed. You feel an odd relief at the thought of something being contained. You've spent too long watching wickedness wander freely, acting like it owns the streets. 1,000 years pass in the vision, like a sentence spoken quickly. Then the dragon is released. Because of course he is. Because evil never leaves without trying the handle one more time. He gathers the nations for war again, surrounding the camp of the holy ones, the beloved city. Fire comes down from heaven and consumes them. Not a battle, not a siege, just done. The dragon is thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and false prophet already are. The reader says they will be tormented day and night forever. Forever is a word you can't hold. Your mind reaches for it and comes back empty, like sticking your hand down a well and finding only cold air. You're still trying to process a lake that burns when the vision turns again. A great white throne appears, white like bleached bone, white like sun on limestone, white like linen that's never touched a street. Someone sits on it, and the earth and sky flee away. That's the phrase. They flee. You picture the ground beneath you trying to run, which is ridiculous, yet your chest tightens anyway. It feels like the ultimate eviction notice. No place left to hide. The dead stand before the throne, small and great. You remember Sheol, where everyone went, righteous and wicked alike. You remember Hades, crowded with imported imagery. Now the dead are standing, waiting, exposed. Books are opened. Your stomach sinks, because books are never good news in the hands of authority. You've seen ledgers. You've watched tax collectors lick their fingers and turn pages like they enjoy it. This is that feeling, multiplied into the cosmos. Another book is opened, the book of life. The dead are judged by what's written. The sea gives up the dead in it. You think of sailors lost, bodies swallowed, gone. Death and Hades give up the dead in them. Death and Hades separate again. Not the same thing, not the final place. More like a holding cell that can be forced to open. You hear that phrase, death and Hades, and your mind snaps back to all those arguments in the streets of Jerusalem. People debating Hades like it's a destination. Yet here it is, not as a destination, as a thing that can be made to release its grip. The judgment happens. Names, deeds, lives laid out like cloth in the sun. Some people in the room are breathing fast, not sobbing, not wailing, just that tight, quiet breathing of people listening to a storm, warning while living in a house with a leaking roof. Then the reader reaches the moment that makes your skin prickle. Death is thrown into the lake of fire. Hades is thrown into the lake of fire. You blink twice. Because what do you mean, death? How do you pick up death? Does it have arms? Does it fight? Does it scream? Does it smell like sickbeds and funerals and the inside of tombs? You picture it like a person for half a heartbeat, grey-faced, hollow-eyed. Then your mind rejects it. Death isn't a person. Death is the thing that happens. It's the cold hand on a fevered forehead. It's the sudden stillness when someone stops breathing. It's the quiet that fills a room right after a last breath, when nobody knows where to put their eyes. Now that is being thrown into fire. You feel the shock ripple through the room. Someone whispers something under their breath, half prayer, half disbelief. Because this is a different kind of fear story. This isn't, you might go to a bad place. This is the thing that haunts every graveyard is getting removed. This is death getting evicted. The reader calls it the second death, the lake of fire. Second death. Not the first one, the one you've watched happen. Not the one that takes the body and leaves everyone else staring at the floor. A second one, aimed at death itself, like the universe finally turns around and says, you're done. Anyone not found written in the book of life is thrown into the lake of fire. The words hang there heavy, hot. You feel a chill anyway, because fear is creative like that. A lake of fire isn't just pain, it's finality. It's the end of resisting, the end of hiding, the end of pretending you can keep doing what you've been doing forever. In the lamp-lit room, you can see faces tight with emotion. Some look relieved. Some look terrified. Some look like they're trying to hold both at once without breaking. The reader doesn't stop at the lake though. The vision moves past it, like the lake is a disposal pit at the edge of a ruined world. A new heaven, a new earth. The first heaven and earth pass away. The sea is gone. For people who fear the sea, that sounds like comfort. For people who live by the sea, it sounds like losing a part of your lungs. A holy city comes down, prepared like a bride. The language turns tender for a moment, astonishingly tender after beasts and blood and sulfur. A loud voice speaks of God dwelling with people. Tears wiped away. No more death, no mourning, no crying, no pain. The former things have passed away. Your throat tightens at no more death, because it hits you right where you live, not in your philosophy, in your body, in your memory of every funeral you've stood at, every grave you've watched get filled, every time you smell damp earth and realize someone is going under it. No more death. In the vision, a river of life flows. A tree stands on both sides of the river somehow, because revelation never checks whether your mental image makes architectural sense. It bears fruit every month, leaves for healing. Healing, not just survival, not just scraping by with hard bread and aching joints and the constant dread of soldiers. Healing like a world that finally stops bleeding. The reader's voice softens as he reaches the end of the portion they're reading tonight. He looks up, eyes shining with lamp reflection. For a moment, the room feels bigger than its cramped walls. The smoke still stings. The baby still smells like sour milk. Someone's sandal still reeks like it stepped in something that used to be alive. Outside, the Empire is still there. Yet in this room, you've just watched death itself get thrown away like trash, into a lake that burns with sulfur, yes, but also into an ending that isn't just the end of people. It's the end of the end. You step back out into the night afterward, and the air feels cooler on your face. The street is quiet mostly. A distant cough, a dog rooting through refuse, the faint clink of a pot being set down somewhere behind a wall. You look up at the sky. The stars are still in place. None of them are falling like figs tonight. Jerusalem, if you're still thinking in Jerusalem terms, still sits on its stones with all its noise and smells and arguments. Rome, if you're thinking in empire terms, still stretches its roads like veins. Death, if you're thinking in human terms, still waits for everyone eventually. Yet your mind keeps circling back to that moment. Death and Hades, dragged forward like defeated enemies, not enthroned, not eternal, thrown. The lake of fire isn't a cozy little torture basement tucked under the universe. It's a bonfire big enough for the things you thought could never burn. Tyranny, violence, lies, the grinding machine that turns people into cargo, the cold shadow that follows every cradle. A place where the story doesn't just punish the wicked, it ends the wickedness. You walk on, sandals scuffing stone, and the lamp smoke of that crowded room still seems stuck in your hair. Somewhere behind you, someone is already retelling what they heard, not carefully, not academically, with gestures, with wide eyes, with that urgent need to make the picture live in someone else's head. A lake of fire, sulfur, beasts, a throne so white the sky runs away, and at the center of it all, the strangest promise of the whole strange vision, that death doesn't get the last word, that death gets a last day, that even Hades, the imported underworld word that's been causing you whiplash for miles, doesn't get to pretend it's permanent, because in this final blazing theater, the villains don't just lose, they get removed, and the night goes on around you, ordinary and unglamorous, full of garbage smells and distant voices, while somewhere, in the dark, a story keeps traveling, hot as sulfur, bright as flame, insisting that the end of the world is not the same as the end of hope. So how did your brain end up with the Eternal Flames version anyway? because you're standing in a perfectly normal street at night, stone under your sandals, garbage smell doing its nightly patrol, a dog coughing up the contents of its soul, and your brain is still full of that lake of fire. Sulfur, beasts, death getting tossed out like yesterday's stew. You keep walking and you realize something unsettling. The story you heard in that lamp-smoked room doesn't stay in that room. It leaks. It leaks the way fish smell leaks out of a basket and into your clothes and into your hair and into your future. It leaks into conversations, into prayers, into warnings parents hiss at children, into sermons that get louder every generation. You pass a courtyard where a couple of men are still talking about it, hands slicing the air. Forever, one says, eyes wide. Day and night, another adds, like he's reading off a penalty notice. Someone else says, Gehenna, with the same tone you'd use for plague or tax collector. And a woman carrying water mutters, Sheol, like she's spitting dust. Different words, same unease. You don't notice the shift at first, because it happens like weather. One day it's just chilly. Next day you wake up and your toes feel personally attacked. A few decades slide by, and the empire keeps doing what empires do. You're in a new city now, farther west, where the air tastes different. Saltier, more fish, more smoke from 1,000 cooking fires that never quite stop. Greek is still everywhere, slick and official. Latin is growing, muscling in, pushing Greek toward the edges like a broad-shouldered soldier at a crowded fountain. You duck into a gathering where people are praying in a mix of tongues, and it sounds like a choir that never rehearsed. Somebody reads out loud, voice trembling a little. Not trembling from fear this time, trembling from importance. They're careful with words because you can feel what's happening. A word lands, and suddenly, it's not comfort. It's offense. You can feel it in the room. There's a man in the corner correcting people under his breath. A living footnote. The kind of person who hears one wrong word and breaks out in spiritual hives. Someone says Hades, and the footnote man makes a face. Someone else says Gehenna, and another person says, No, listen, infernus. It's Latin, and it lands heavy. Infer sounds like below, like a basement door opening. It sounds like stairs that go down into damp. It sounds official. The room smells like old wool and breath and oil lamps, but you catch another smell too. Ink. Somebody has brought writing materials. That alone changes everything. Not everybody can write. Not everybody can afford a scroll or parchment. When writing shows up in a room like this, it's like a weapon being placed on the table. Everyone sits a little straighter. You watch a scribe at work, fingers stained dark, nails rimmed with grime that never comes out. He's hunched over, shoulders tight, because one spill ruins everything. The ink smells sharp and sour, like crushed bugs and vinegar. He writes slowly, and every letter looks like it costs him something. And you see it happen right there, in the cramped light. A word gets chosen. Not because lightning struck, not because a trumpet sounded, because a tired man with stained fingers had to pick something that would fit in his language, in his mouth, in his world. Sheol, that deep, silent pit word from your earlier nightmares, doesn't sit naturally in Latin. It's foreign grit. It's a Hebrew coat that doesn't fit your shoulders. So people start reaching for words they already have. Words for down, words for below, words for the underplace. In the beginning, it's not even theatrical. It's practical. You can almost hear the thought in the room. We need a word people will understand. And once you give people a word they understand, they immediately start decorating it. That's just how humans are. You've seen it with houses. Someone builds a simple stone house. Fine, functional, keeps the rain off. Then the next person adds a little courtyard. Then somebody paints the door red. Then someone's cousin carves a fancy lintel, and suddenly the whole village is competing for most blessed entryway. Hell develops like that, brick by brick, image by image, one helpful explanation at a time, until you can't remember what the original foundation even looked like. Another century passes, persecution flares and fades, and you learn what damp underground smells like. You're pressed into a catacomb with other believers, because the world upstairs is in a mood. The air down here is cold and stale, heavy with limestone and old death. The walls sweat a little. Your torch sputters and paints everything in nervous orange. There are niches in the walls where bodies rest, sealed up with stone. Some of the seals have names scratched into them. Some have symbols. Some have nothing at all. You try not to think about the smell that would happen if any of those seals failed. Somebody whispers about judgment. Someone else whispers back, the lake of fire. And a third person says, almost angrily, it's not a metaphor. That's new, not universally new, not official new, but new in the way a rumor is new. Suddenly, everywhere, suddenly sticky. You notice how fear behaves in a room like this. It doesn't just scare you. It organizes you. It makes people want clarity. Clarity feels like safety, even if the clarity is terrifying. A man with a beard that looks like it's been gnawed on by stress tells a story about what happens to the wicked. He leans forward, eyes shining in torchlight. He describes fire with the detail of someone who has watched too many cooking accidents. He talks about worms, about darkness, about grinding teeth. You feel your stomach do that slow, unpleasant roll, because somebody in the back nods like they've been waiting for this, waiting for the underworld to finally have furniture. The old idea, the silent place where everyone goes and nothing happens, doesn't satisfy a room full of people who are being hunted. They want the universe to make sense. They want the wicked to get it. They want the brutal to meet something bigger than themselves, something that doesn't take bribes. So the pictures sharpen. Not all at once, not with an announcement. They sharpen the way a knife sharpens. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Same blade, new edge. Time lurches again, and now the world above ground changes. Constantine has made faith fashionable, and the whole vibe shifts. You walk into a basilica that used to be something else, and now it's packed. The ceilings are high, which means every cough echoes like a confession. The air is thick with incense, sweet resin trying desperately to cover up a crowd of humans who all walked here, sweated here, and brought their unwashed lives with them. Your sandals stick slightly to the floor in places, because somebody spilled oil or wine or something less holy. Up front, a bishop speaks with the confidence of someone who has finally been handed the microphone. And once the microphone exists, you learn a hard truth. Some people were born to use it. He talks about salvation like it's a lifeboat, and judgment like it's the sea. He doesn't just say fire. He says it like he can see it. He makes it sound hot enough to blister the imagination. People listen with wide eyes. Children stare like they're watching a street performer swallow swords. You realize another shift is happening. Before, these ideas traveled person to person, like whispers in an alley. Now they're being preached in large rooms with good acoustics. Now they're being repeated on purpose. Repetition does something to images. It polishes them. It turns a blurry shape into something with teeth. Not literal teeth. Not yet. But give it time. The centuries keep moving, and you keep getting dragged along like a tourist who didn't read the itinerary. Now you're in North Africa, where the air is warmer and your skin feels permanently dusty. A man named Augustine is speaking, and people lean in because when he talks, it sounds like stone being stacked into a wall. He's not telling campfire stories, he's building. He talks about punishment as something that lasts. He uses words that feel heavy and final. You can almost hear the relief in the crowd when he makes it sound definite. A sentence with no wiggle room. A cosmic verdict with neat edges. Because ambiguity is exhausting. Ambiguity is waking up at night and staring into the dark, trying to remember whether the universe has a spine. A crowd that has suffered wants the universe to have a spine. So Augustine's words travel. They travel the way good building methods travel. Someone hears it, repeats it, teaches it, copies it, argues it, refines it. You see scribes in small rooms, hunched over tables. These rooms smell like sheep. Not metaphorically, literally. Parchment is skin, and when it gets warm under lamplight, it releases this faint animal funk. Like the book itself is still alive and slightly offended. The scribes scrape and copy and squint. Their backs ache. Their fingers cramp. Ink stains the creases of their hands like permanent bruises. And every time they copy, every time they choose a word, the underworld gets a little more architecture, a little more permanence, a little more, this is how it is. You move forward again, and the empire that used to feel unbreakable is cracking. Cities are sacked. Roads aren't as safe. Everything smells more like smoke these days, as if the whole world is being slow cooked. You sit in a monastery guest hall with travelers who are swapping stories like they're trading bandages. Someone has a vision. You can tell it's a vision because they say it with that special tone, half terrified, half proud. I saw a place, the traveler says. I saw souls. People lean in. There's always a crowd for this. He describes bridges over flames. He describes pits. He describes demons as if they're prison guards. And you notice what's happening in real time. Folk imagination is pouring into the gaps. When the official words feel too plain, the unofficial stories bloom like mold on damp bread, fast, aggressively, with textures nobody asked for. The monks listen, faces serious, and afterward one of them paints a little illustration in the margin of a manuscript. It's small, just a quick sketch, a little devil shape, a little flame. It's almost cute, almost. But once you put a devil in a margin, you've admitted devils into the room, and they never leave politely. A few more generations pass. Now you're standing outside a church, staring up at the doorway, and you freeze. Because carved into the stone above the entrance is a giant scene of judgment. It's not subtle. It's not spiritually suggestive. It's a full-body warning in limestone. You see bodies rising. You see angels with stern faces. You see a great figure enthroned, calm as a tax collector doing math. And to one side, because there's always a to one side, you see the damned. Their faces are twisted. Their limbs are bent the wrong way. A demon is yanking one man by the hair like he's dragging a rug. Another demon is shoving someone into a mouth-shaped furnace. A mouth-shaped furnace. Apparently, we needed the fire to have lips. You stand there with your jaw slightly open, because this is no longer a debate in a smoky room. This is carved into the building you enter to pray. People walk under it every week. Parents point up and whisper to children who are already sticky with dirt and running noses. Behave, the whisper says, without saying it. God sees, the stone screams. Inside, it continues. The walls are painted with scenes that make your stomach tighten. Hell is no longer a word. Hell is a mural. Hell has color. Hell has red paint that looks like dried blood, and black paint that looks like soot, and little figures with claws, The artist has never seen a demon, obviously, so he borrows parts from animals he hates. Goat legs, dog teeth, bat wings. Basically the whole barnyard, redesigned by someone with personal grudges. You smell damp plaster and candle smoke. The candles are made from tallow, which means they smell faintly like a kitchen that never cleans its pans. They burn, and they weep greasy tears down their sides. Someone sings. The sound echoes, and there, above the choir, is a painted Christ judging the world with a face so calm it's almost rude. To his right, the blessed stand in neat rows like people who arrived early to get good seats. To his left, chaos, fire, hooks, a demon sticking something sharp into someone's backside, not poetically, not symbolically. The artist has made a choice. You shift your weight and think, with a kind of exhausted awe, that somebody sat at a table and decided, yes, this is what people need to see, because now hell is doing another job. It's not just an answer to suffering, it's a tool for behavior, and it works. Fear works even when it's messy, especially when it's messy. You keep moving through time, and the stories keep getting more detailed, like the underworld has a team of interior designers. There are new words in people's mouths. Inferno, hell, damnation. You hear hell in the mouths of people speaking languages that didn't exist back when you first stood by that grave thinking about Sheol. The word sounds blunt, Saxon, like a hammer hitting a nail. It feels less like a shadowy realm and more like a place you can fall into, which is exactly the point. You're in a village square now, and a traveling preacher is drawing a crowd. He stands on a stool that wobbles slightly, because of course it does. It's medieval carpentry. Nothing is level, nothing is stable. Your ankles are always in danger. He starts preaching judgment. He doesn't speak like a philosopher. He speaks like a man describing a house fire. He talks about flames licking skin. He talks about screams that never stop. He talks about devils that poke and prod with implements that sound suspiciously like whatever the local blacksmith has been making lately. The crowd reacts like it always does, some terrified, some thrilled, some quietly smug because they're sure it's not about them. A child cries. A woman hushes the child too sharply because she's frightened and trying to control something. You smell sweat because fear makes people sweat. You smell onions because everybody eats onions. You smell the faint sour stink of a nearby alley where human waste is doing what human waste does. Hell is being preached in the middle of ordinary filth. That's the genius of it, in a horrible way. You don't have to imagine much to believe people deserve punishment. You've stepped in the evidence. Time slips again, and now you're in Italy. The streets are tighter, the buildings taller, the air damp with river smell and ambition. There's a man here, sharp-eyed, intense, who looks like he hasn't slept well in years. He's the kind of person who turns personal grudges into literature. His name is Dante, and he is about to do something that will permanently rearrange the mental furniture of the Christian world. You don't see it yet. At first, it just feels like another evening in a city where everyone argues loudly. You're in a room where a poem is being read. People are clustered close, because that's how you do everything before central heating and personal space. Cloaks brush, elbows bump. Someone's breath is red wine sour. Dante's words roll out, and suddenly, you're not in a sermon anymore. You're on a guided tour. He takes you down, not into a vague below, down into circles, levels, departments. It's like hell has become a bureaucracy. There are categories for sins, like an eternal filing system, like the universe has been reorganized by someone who loves labels. The deeper you go, the worse it gets. You hear about storms that fling lustful souls around like laundry in a hurricane. You hear about filth and muck for the gluttonous, which feels appropriate because gluttony is already messy. It's the sin that comes with crumbs. You hear about boiling blood, frozen lakes, punishments that fit the crime with a neat, vicious logic. And the crowd listening? They eat it up. Because Dante doesn't just scare you. He entertains you. He gives you images you can't shake. He gives you a hell that feels real because it feels designed. He gives you famous faces down there too. People everyone knows, people everyone hates. Hell becomes a place where justice is not just done. It's curated. You leave that room and step into the street, and you realize what just happened. A poet built a world so vivid that it starts living in people's heads alongside the older, hazier words. People start picturing Dante's hell when they hear sermons. Painters start painting Dante's hell when they decorate walls. Preachers start borrowing Dante's details because why wouldn't they? It's like someone added spices to bland stew, and now nobody wants the old recipe. You move forward again, and the Middle Ages are deepening. More churches, more murals, more stained glass. You stand in a cathedral and tilt your head back until your neck complains, and you see bright windows showing heaven like a jeweled city. And in the shadows below, carved into choir stalls and hidden under lecterns, there are little grotesque demons, grinning faces, tongues out, tiny devils pulling faces at you from the woodwork. It's like the building itself is haunted by its own warning. Even the architecture is in on it. You hear plays performed in town squares, morality plays, where actors dress as devils with costumes that smell like sweat and cheap dye. They prance and caper and shove souls toward a fake hellmouth. The hellmouth is literally a giant mouth, canvas stretched over wood painted red, with teeth like broken boards. Smoke pours out of it, probably from damp straw being burned because nobody has fog machines yet. The smoke stinks. It stings your eyes. Children scream and laugh at the same time, because that's what kids do when they're thrilled and scared. A devil actor pokes someone with a pitchfork. Yes, a pitchfork. It's always farm tools, because you use what you have. The crowd roars. Hell is now public entertainment. It's a theme park attraction, except instead of snacks, you get repentance. Time lurches again. The printing press arrives, and you can feel the world change like a floorboard snapping underfoot. Suddenly words don't travel at the speed of a tired traveler. They travel at the speed of paper. You stand in a shop where sheets are being printed, and the air is thick with ink and damp fiber. It smells like wet wood and oil and hot metal. The press thumps. Every thump is another page, another copy, another identical set of words marching out into the world like soldiers. Woodcuts are carved, simple images stamped onto paper. And what do people print? Warnings, judgments, illustrations of heaven and hell. Because if you can mass-produce anything, you mass-produce fear and hope. Those are the products that never go out of style. You watch someone buy a pamphlet with a crude picture of devils dragging people into flames. He looks at it the way someone looks at an injury, half horrified and half unable to look away. He tucks it into his coat like it's a talisman. A traveling preacher gets hold of it, and now the picture is on his tongue. Now he can describe it in detail in every village. And the villages, God help them, are already full of fire. Houses burn easily, kitchens catch, candles tip, a thatched roof goes up, and the whole street becomes a bonfire. So when a preacher talks about flame, nobody thinks it's abstract. They've smelled burning hair. They've heard the panic in a neighbor's voice. They've seen a person stumble out of smoke with their eyebrows gone. Fire is personal. And eternal fire, that's just regular fire with nowhere to run. You slide forward again into an era where sermons get louder and sharper. You find yourself in a crowded church, shoulder to shoulder, listening to a man who speaks like he's trying to punch the air into behaving. He describes hell with the confidence of someone who has never been there but has strong opinions. He talks about souls roasting. He talks about never ending. He talks about devils as if they're employed full time. The crowd reacts. Some people sob. Some people grip their benches until their knuckles go pale. A few people glance sideways at their neighbors, as if checking who looks guilty. Because now hell isn't just a destination. It's a surveillance system. You notice it creeping into everyday speech. A mother snaps at her child, "Do you want to burn?" The way a modern parent might say, "Do you want to lose your phone?" A man swears an oath and adds, "May I be damned," like he's signing a contract. The imagery has moved into the bones of the culture, not because everyone sat down and agreed, because everyone kept repeating what scared them. And when you repeat a fear long enough, it becomes furniture. Now you're standing in front of a painting so large it makes you dizzy. A Last Judgment scene. Bodies everywhere. Angels blowing trumpets like they're trying to wake the dead with brass. The blessed rising neat and bright. The damned tumbling down into a chaos of flames, claws, mouths, hooks, chains. The artist has painted fire like it's alive. It curls around bodies like hands. You stare too long, and your eyes start to pick out details you didn't want. A demon biting a man's thigh. A man being shoved headfirst into a furnace. A face twisted in a silent scream. The paint is cracked in places, which somehow makes it worse. The cracks look like scars. You step back, and your heel touches something sticky on the floor. You look down. It's wax. Dripped from 100 candles, trampled by 1,000 feet. Even the floor is made of old offerings and old fear. You realize you've walked a long way from Sheol. Sheol was silence. Sheol was dust. Sheol didn't have demons with personality. Gehenna was a valley you could visit. You could smell it. You could point at it. You could warn your kids not to play near the burning trash. Hades was a borrowed word that carried other people's stories in its pockets. The lake of fire was cosmic theatre, big enough to swallow death itself. But this medieval hell has become a fully staffed facility. It has architecture. It has punishments tailored like clothing. It has a cast of characters. It has props. It has marketing. And the wild part is, you can see the layers. You can feel them like sediment under your feet. One generation adds a word that fits their tongue. Another generation adds a story that fits their fear. Another generation adds art that fits their need to make the invisible visible. A poet adds circles. A painter adds color. A preacher adds volume. And suddenly, you've got an entire world that people talk about with more detail than their own kitchens. You walk through a town at dusk, and you hear someone describing hell like it's just over the hill. "It's down there," he says, pointing vaguely, as if the underworld is a neighboring village with bad reviews. A woman crosses herself quickly and mutters a prayer. A child asks, "Is it hot?" And the adult answers, "Hotter than you can imagine." And you almost laugh, because you've learned imagine is a dangerous tool. People use it, and the pictures grow teeth. The bells of the town church ring. The sound is heavy, rolling over rooftops. It's comforting. It's also a reminder that the church is the loudest voice in town, and the loudest voice gets to shape the nightmares. You move forward again, and the world keeps changing clothes. The Reformation cracks the Western church like a pot dropped on stone. and suddenly everyone is arguing again. Pamphlets fly, sermons get sharper, words like damnation get used like rocks. You stand in a tavern, low ceiling, smoky air, spilled beer soaked into the wood, and you hear men debating hell the way men debate war and taxes, and whose cow wandered into whose field. They slam cups down, beer sloshes. One man says, eternal. Another says, no, it ends. A third says, you'll find out soon enough, like that's clever. The tavern smells like yeast and sweat and wet wool drying too slowly. Someone's dog is gnawing a bone in the corner with the intensity of a person working through a grudge. Even here, in a place built for forgetting, hell is in the conversation. Because hell isn't just theology now, it's culture. It's threat, it's comfort for the wronged and terror for the guilty, sometimes at the same time in the same chest. You slide further into the era of revival preaching, and now hell is coming at you like a wave. You stand in a packed meeting house where the air is thick with bodies and heat. There's no incense here, no fancy mosaics, just rough wooden benches, the smell of sweat and damp coats, and a preacher who looks like he could scare a thunderstorm into apologizing. He leans over the pulpit, his voice drops, and when he says hell, it's not a faraway place, it's right under the floorboards. He describes fire so vividly you can almost feel your shins warming. He describes worms so insistently you start itching. He describes eternity like it's a locked room. People cry out. Some faint. Someone grips your sleeve like they're falling off a cliff, and their hand is shaking so hard you can feel it through the fabric. This is hell as an emergency. Hell as a weaponized alarm bell. Hell as the final consequence that makes everything else feel small. And in the back of your mind, you can still see that earlier lamplit room with Revelation being read, where the lake of fire wasn't a torture chamber so much as an ending. The end of death. The end of the beast. The end of the whole nightmare. But the image has traveled a long road. On that road, it picked up additions. It picked up demons with job descriptions. It picked up tortures that look suspiciously like whatever the local justice system does to prisoners. It picked up poetry and paint and plays and pamphlets. It picked up the human need for the universe to feel fair, and the human habit of making fairness look like a courtroom with flames. You're outside again, walking through a town that smells of horses and chimney smoke. You pass a blacksmith shop and hear the hiss of hot metal plunged into water. Steam bursts up. For a second, you see the image. Fire, heat, punishment, the smell of scorched iron. You can see how easily a mind grabs that and runs. The blacksmith wipes his brow with a forearm streaked with soot. He looks like a man who knows fire intimately. He also looks like a man who knows it can be used to shape things. That's what happened. Fire became a shaping tool. A metaphor hardened into geography. A warning turned into a map. A few strange vivid images, valley fires, underworld words, a lake of sulfur at the end of a fever dream apocalypse, became a whole constructed place in the imagination of the West. Not built in one day, built the way cathedrals are built, slowly, by many hands, with scaffolding, with arguments, with mistakes that get covered up by the next layer of stone. You stand in the shadow of one of those cathedrals again, looking up. Gargoyles leer down, mouths open to spit rainwater off the roof. Their faces are frozen in permanent mockery. They're supposed to frighten away evil. They also look like they'd absolutely steal your lunch. You can't help thinking, even the rain gutters are demons now. That's how thorough the imagination got. And as you walk away, your mind keeps flipping through the words like old coins in your pocket. Sheol, silent dust, Gehenna, burning valley outside the walls. Hades, borrowed underworld, crowded with other people's baggage. Lake of fire, the last blazing disposal of everything that devours life. Then the later words pile on. Infernus, inferno, hell, each one carrying more certainty, more detail, more theatrical smoke. 2,000 years of people doing what people always do when they're scared and hopeful at the same time. They fill in the blanks. They paint the darkness. They name the unnamed. They build a place out of fear, justice, anger, comfort, and a little bit of showmanship. Because if you can make the invisible visible, you can point at it. And if you can point at it, you can use it. The street quiets as night deepens. Somewhere, a bell rings a final time. A door closes. A candle goes out behind a window, leaving a rectangle of darkness. And in that darkness, the images remain. Layers upon layers, still traveling, still being repeated, still being carved into minds as easily as stone, waiting for the next voice to pick them up and describe them like they've always been there. So after all of that, the dust, the valley, the flames, what were the ancient storytellers actually trying to tell us? Because you can feel your brain still trying to build a floor plan. Room 1, screaming. Room 2, pitchfork storage. Room 3, worms apparently. Your mind wants coordinates and doorways, like you're planning a visit and need to know whether the bedding will have fleas. But what you've been walking through isn't a tourist brochure. It's more like a series of warning signs nailed to a crooked fence. Not elegant, not consistent, very human, and somehow still doing its job. You drift back to Sheol, that underground silence that felt less like punishment and more like being erased. No fire, no courtroom, no demon payroll. Just the great equalizer where kings and servants end up with the same dusty mouth and the same nothing to brag about. That's a brutal kind of honesty. Sheol doesn't flatter anybody. It doesn't care about your status, your enemies, or your accomplishments, your legacy. It's the ultimate reminder that your body is not a permanent address. And that does something to you while you're still breathing. It yanks you out of the illusion that you're untouchable. It makes arrogance look stupid, because dust is patient and has a perfect record. It also makes cruelty look even worse, because you don't get infinite time to make it right. So when later voices start talking about hope beyond that, about God not abandoning people to the grave, it lands like water in a dry throat. Not as trivia, as mercy, as the idea that the silent pit doesn't get the final word. And then your feet carry you back to Gehenna, the valley outside the walls, the place that smells like ash, rot, and whatever somebody dumped an hour ago because they didn't want it in their house. Gehenna is not an abstract threat. It's a real location with real smoke that clings to your hair. You don't need imagination. You need a nose that still works. When Jesus talks about it, it hits like someone pointing at the community trash fire and saying, "Keep going like this, and you'll end up living in it." It's a warning about trajectories, about what happens when anger, greed, and violence become normal enough that nobody even flinches. Gehenna is what your society smells like when it's rotting from the inside. It's what happens when the vulnerable get chewed up and tossed out, and everyone acts like that's just how life works. That valley is a sermon you can walk through with your shoes sticking slightly to the ground. So Gehenna isn't mainly about the afterlife. It's about the life you're building right now, together. A community can become a place where children are safe, where the poor aren't trampled, where truth matters. Or it can become a valley of burning leftovers, and the leftovers are people. And then Hades walks in. That Greek word that wandered into the conversation and brought luggage. Hades is what happens when languages collide and nobody gets a clean translation. One crowd hears the grave, another crowd hears the underworld, and immediately their brains start installing dramatic lighting. So you get stories that sound like they're happening in a world with a fence between comfort and torment. A drop of water becomes a luxury item. A chasm becomes the most frustrating piece of geography imaginable. The point isn't that you're supposed to sketch it on parchment. The point is that reversal is coming. That wealth built on indifference is a flimsy mattress. It feels soft until it doesn't. Hades functions like a mirror held up to the powerful. It says, your life is already shaping you. Not later, now. Every day you practice becoming someone. And eventually that practice hardens. And after all that, you hit Revelation's lake of fire, which is not subtle. It's the kind of image that kicks down the door and fills the room with smoke. But in that wild, apocalyptic theatre, the shock is what gets thrown in. Death, the grave, the whole business of decay and endings and funerals. That's the real gut punch. The fire isn't just for bad people in a simplistic sense. It's for the things that devour people. It's for the machinery of evil, the systems and powers that grind the world down, and even death itself, treated like an enemy that can be defeated. So the lake of fire isn't meant to make you obsess over torture. It's meant to hand you a promise. The nightmare ends. The beast doesn't win. The bully doesn't get the last laugh. It's cosmic justice, not a sadistic hobby. It's the claim that God doesn't just comfort victims. God confronts what made them victims. And that is a very different kind of fire. Now fold in everything you saw afterward, the slow construction project we now call hell. Words getting chosen because someone needed a word that fit in their mouth. Images getting sharpened because fear craves detail. Art making the invisible visible, and then refusing to let it be invisible ever again. You watch the whole thing pick up props, pitchforks, circles, demons with expressions like disgruntled employees. It becomes a fully furnished horror attraction because humans cannot leave well enough alone. And honestly, part of that makes sense. People who are suffering want the universe to mean something. People who have been crushed want justice that doesn't get bribed. People want a world where cruelty isn't the final chapter. But the danger is when the furniture becomes the point. When the imagery takes over and the actual message gets buried under theatrical smoke. When fear becomes the only tool in the toolbox, used for everything from genuine repentance to petty control. So after this whole long walk, down into Sheol, out to Gehenna, across to Hades, through Revelation's blazing finale, and then forward into centuries of human imagination, what's left in your hands is weight. Not a diagram, not a floor plan, just the feeling that your days are real and other people are real. You don't get endless time. You don't get to toss humans into the leftovers pile and pretend it won't poison the whole street. And when evil struts around like it's permanent, the last image you heard refuses to agree. The final picture isn't evil reigning forever. It's evil being ended, even death being ended. That's the thread running through all the smoke and dust. Not a map of the afterlife you can navigate with a compass. A set of truths you can live within your bones. Your choices matter, communities matter, justice matters. And the wrong that's been done, loud or quiet, public or hidden, doesn't get to be the last word. After all, the shouting and murals and flames painted on church walls, that's the calm center. Not a universe run by chaos. Not a world where the wicked get away clean forever. A world where God's justice is real, where mercy is real, and where the grave is not the ultimate landlord. The images did what images always do. They grabbed you by the collar. They made sure you wouldn't forget. And once you finally stop trying to draw the floor plan, you can let them do the simpler work. Keep you honest, keep you human, keep you hopeful. Your feet find the path again, and the ground finally stops feeling like it wants to cling to you. The air is cooler now. Not cool like refreshing evening stroll. Cool like stone walls letting go of heat, one reluctant breath at a time. And now the fires fade, the smoke clears, and you're left with something quieter than you expected. You keep walking, because what else do you do after staring at a valley that used to chew up a city's trash and spit out ash? Your sandals scrape over grit and tiny rocks, the kind that always sneak in and stab you in the heel. Somewhere behind you, Jerusalem keeps being Jerusalem. Distant voices, a dog barking like it's personally offended by the night, a door slamming hard enough to start an argument. But out here, the sound thins. The wind moves through dry grass and low branches, and it doesn't carry screaming. It just carries air. You thought you'd end this journey with a diagram, a neat little map, labels in the margins. You are here, with an arrow. Instead, you're holding a handful of images that refuse to line up like polite furniture in a showroom. A pit of silence, a trash valley that once stank of rot and burned offerings, a Greek underworld word that brought its own dramatic staging, a lake of fire that swallowed up death itself like it was taking out the trash. It's maddening, honestly. Your mind keeps reaching for a lever marked certainty, and every time you pull it, you get fog. You glance back anyway. Down there where you were bracing yourself for flames licking the rocks, there's just darkening earth. The valley is a shape now, a dip in the land, a place where shadows pool. If you squint, you can almost smell the old stories. Charcoal, refuse, something sour that never quite leaves a place once it's lived there. But tonight, the air doesn't punch you in the face. It doesn't demand you be terrified on schedule. It just sits there, quiet, like a room after an argument ends and everyone finally goes to bed. And that's the strange comfort of it. Not that everything gets answered, not that you can finally stop being human. Just that the universe doesn't seem obsessed with satisfying your curiosity. The people who first told these stories lived with dirt under their nails. They buried parents, they lost children. They watched the strong take what they wanted and call it normal. And when they talked about what comes after, they didn't hand you a travel brochure. They handed you warnings that smell like real smoke. They handed you hope that survives without stage props. You can feel the shift in your own chest when you stop demanding a blueprint. Because all that frantic energy, where do I go, what happens, who ends up where, starts to loosen its grip, and what's left is simpler, heavier, and somehow more useful. You're alive, you're walking, your feet hurt, your stomach is doing that quiet complaint where it reminds you that bread is not optional. And while you're here, while you're still in the part where your choices can touch other people, you're being asked to care about things that actually happen in daylight. Justice that isn't theoretical. Mercy that costs something. A tongue that can bless and also ruin a day, depending on what you do with it. You think about Sheol again, that blunt, dust-throated silence. Not as a threat, not as a spooky basement under the world, but as an honest reminder. You don't get endless time, not to fix what you broke, not to say what you should have said, not to become the kind of person you keep promising you'll become later. And you think about Gehenna, not as a supernatural torture chamber, but as a very real valley that once held the consequences of a people's worst instincts, a place you could walk to, a place you could smell, a place where the community dumped what it didn't want to see. It's almost embarrassing how quickly humans can get used to tossing things away. Objects, animals, people. Out here, with the city behind you and the valley below, you can feel how hard the old warnings land without needing extra decoration. You don't need cartoon demons. You just need to look at what happens when cruelty becomes normal and nobody bothers to stop it. And then there's that wild, fierce promise you carried through the last stretch. Evil doesn't get to be forever. Death doesn't get to be the final landlord. Not because you figured out the mechanics, not because you solved the puzzle, but because the story refuses to end with the grave grinning. Your shoulders drop a little at that. Not because everything is easy, because the weight shifts. You don't have to spend tonight staring into the dark, trying to force it to cough up a clear answer. Some questions are too big to fit inside your mouth without breaking your teeth. Some mysteries are allowed to be mysteries without turning into threats. The path curves, and the valley slips out of view. You pass a small stand of trees, real ones, not the dead, thorny scrubs that look like they gave up weeks ago. Their leaves rattle softly, and the sound is ordinary, beautifully ordinary, the kind of sound that says the world keeps going, even after people have filled it with smoke. You can almost see it the way it is now, long after the old fires, green in places, quiet, a valley that has been used and abused and still sits there taking rain when it comes. The rocks haven't moved. The earth remembers. And you, walking away, remember too. Not a floor plan, not a tidy system, just the steady, stubborn insistence that what you do with your life matters. The city lights flicker behind you like distant embers. The night settles in without drama, and somewhere, beyond the walls and the stories and the arguments people keep having about flame and shadow, mercy still waits to be chosen. Justice still waits to be done. And the world keeps turning, quiet as a valley after the fire has finally gone out.